welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, and scriptards. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau, and I have a stuffed nose.
Sounds pretty good. Keep it up.
I gotta practice that radio DJ voice where they always sound like they have a stuffed nose. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't know that they always sounded like that.
They always sound like this, so when they actually have a stuffed nose, you can't tell they have a stuffed nose.
Why, that's a brilliant way to do that. I think we're all going to have to keep that up now.
Yes, we'll have to keep doing this, so you'll never know when we have a stuffed nose.
I don't have a stuffed nose, in fact.
But I actually do, in fact.
I have stuffed it myself.
To stuff your own nose. All right, so we got some pyramid updates from Mexico, from Mexico.
Actually, they're not really updates, which is what the update is about.
Right, that's right.
I was trying to find the most recent stories on this pyramid of the plumed serpent, where they found the tunnel that went in. And we talked about it last time.
Yeah.
And the latest thing I could find was in April of 2017, but it was just a story.
Like a rehash of something?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. It's The Guardian, and they just have a story about what they discovered in 2014.
Huh.
So, in 2014, they were digging up all the stuff in the tunnel, and they're thinking that they're going to find a tomb.
Right.
And then by 2015, at some point, they had completed the excavation, and they found like 100,000 artifacts.
Right.
In there. And I wanted to read this one part. I was talking about the bottom of these things being like a map, like a topography map. It says, there is no tomb. Let's see.
There is no tomb. That's what we need to tell all the archaeologists. You just have to remember, there is no tomb.
Yeah, so it says, excitement mounted with the discovery the following year that the Earth appeared to have been sculpted into elegant miniature landscapes depicting mountains and valleys with drops of mercury deposited to symbolize sacred rivers or lakes. But the tomb was never found. I was like, what? That's all they say. So it's already like assuming that the tomb was there.
Right.
And then later they go to say that we have evidence that something very large and heavy was dragged out of the tunnel at some point. It could have been a tomb, but we just don't know. So like I just wanted to.
And so again, you have this thing where they're trying to imply that it's a tomb that was looted, but when the archaeologists find it, it's full of loot, but no body.
Right. So the thing that they looted, the very big, large thing that they drug out of there was the sarcophagus.
Right.
And they left all of the jade freaking statues and...
Yeah. You can't call it sarcophagus though, because that's an Egyptian word.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's like, I mean, it's not the same thing. Even if it's a giant stone box all carved to look like the guy that's in it, it's not a sarcophagus.
I thought it was odd that they called it a tomb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they drug the tomb out.
Oh, that's what it was. The tomb that was cut into the rock, they drug that down the tunnel. I got it.
Right, they stole the tomb. So, I just... the sarcophago.
The official program observer just told us that the Spanish word for sarcophagus is sarcophago.
Oh my god. But is that talking about an Egyptian sarcophagus, or
right.
is that some tomb in Spanish?
Is that the Spanish word for an Egyptian sarcophagus?
Okay, so the thing that I really wanted to point out here is not so much about the story, but the fact that in April of 2017, there's a story written about what they discovered
In 2014.
in 14 and 15. And they've removed 100,000 artifacts since 2015. They'd completed the excavation, and there's been nothing. Because you can find stories from 2015 that are saying basically the same kind of stuff. So this is just like a rehash of the same story, and it's the latest, and there's nothing else. And I'm like, what? So they got mad because they couldn't find a tomb, and so for 2 years they just haven't published anything.
They rage quit.
They rage
quit. Flip the table over and just quit.
Yeah, so man, if anybody stumbles upon anything about this or knows anyone that knows anything,
Yeah, I would
send
love
us
to
an
hear.
email.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, because
They, like you were talking about the metal spheres that they found. And
Yes.
I did find a piece of a story that was about that, and they were actually clay spheres that were coated somehow in pyrite, so that they looked like when they were.
So maybe that's what it was. I was reading. It probably said gold spheres or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was pyrite. Yeah.
But they looked, shiny golden spheres all over the floor of this
Yeah.
thing. And then, as I was saying last time, they had taken little pieces of pyrite and put them all in the ceiling
to make it look like stars.
look like shining stars. And then they had liquid mercury in the bottom of the maps.
Yeah.
And then,
It's weird how the article says droplets.
yeah.
I'm like,
But they found a lot.
I know.
Mercury.
Like little drops of mercury to make. I'm like, no, I don't think it was little drops.
Yeah. So
Probably a lot.
The other thing is, they use pyrite a lot. Like in the statues, one of the statues of the female had like this little backpack that was full of all these mirrors, and the mirrors were made with little pieces of pyrite.
Whoa.
And they were like,
It was so that they could like shine the mirrors into the land of the dead for the dead walking. And
I was like, you are so obsessed with tombs. Everything about it has to be about the dead, and they're like,
the statues must have represented the founders of the city.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, I mean, if you read.
And the tunnel represents the underworld.
That's right.
The entrance to the underworld.
like, no, a tunnel doesn't represent the underworld. It's fucking under the world.
That's right. It is under the world. Yeah, well, they all. I mean, the common conception of Teotihuacan is that it's a necropolis, so they look at everything there through the lens of it being a mortuary place, like a place where they interred the dead.
Yeah.
That's why everything has to do with dead, like anything there is going to be some symbolic thing of mythology about what these people believe about the afterlife to the archaeologists because they think it's a necropolis.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But that's because, all pyramids are necropolises. Because, the 3 great pyramids in Egypt were obviously a necropolis.
Right. And it's like,
Since no tombs were found in those.
and we're like beavers. Beavers all build dams the same way, and we all build pyramids the same way and not use them for tombs the same way.
What was the Pleistocene massive beaver? He didn't
yeah.
build dams the same way.
His dams are like the Hoover.
They were the god of dams.
That's right.
God dams.
That's right. The god dams. These goddamn Pleistocene beavers. That was their official name.
Anyway, that was all. I just wanted a quick update on that, which is not an update.
It is an update of a kind, though. But yeah, that seems to be happening a lot with archaeological stuff. Like, okay, so 3 or 4 years ago, all of these things were happening at the same time. We had Gunung Padang in Indonesia. It was being dug up. We had Göbekli Tepe was being worked on. All this shit, and like all these amazing things were being discovered. Then it just stops.
Right. But the difference, okay, Göbekli Tepe, like, they actually, the lead guy stopped. He died.
Yeah.
Right? He stopped.
Right.
But with this guy, Gomez, I think is his name, the lead archaeologist in the area, and like he's still there doing all this shit. And so they find a tunnel recently under the Pyramid of the Moon.
Yeah.
And they're like, tomb!
Right. Nope. Yeah.
Same deal.
Going from past experience. No.
But to them, they're like, from past experience, there's tombs in
Right.
these tunnels.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there isn't. That's why I was saying before. Like, science is actually people try to look at it as like that we're getting smarter and we're learning things all the time. And I'm like, no. What we're actually doing with science is showing how we're always fucking wrong about everything.
Yeah.
It's like everything you see is like scientists were baffled by some scientific discovery.
Yeah.
Because they weren't expecting that shit.
Yeah.
And it's like science is a like the history of science is about how fucking wrong we are.
Yeah, exactly.
But people are like, well, we're getting more right. I'm like, yeah, but just going by history, we're fucking wrong. That's what you have to assume based on science is that anything we're guessing about is wrong. It's fucking wrong. We're gonna get there and we're gonna be like, holy shit, it's not like that at all.
We were right, but we were wrong.
Right.
Because it's actually this other thing. Even though
Right.
we had sort of this and that right, we were still wrong.
Yeah.
They're kind of like us in the podcast
Yeah.
world. We get 98% of everything
wrong. That's right.
but not everything.
We're trying to get most of it wrong. Not all of it.
Not
just
all of it.
most of it. Yeah. The standards here. But that's not how it's treated. You know, like I was talking about before, was getting into an argument with people about Mars. You know, when I read that CIA remote viewing document where the guy was remote viewing Mars, he didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was all this ancient shit, and there were people in the comments who were like, "Oh my God, that couldn't have been Mars because we know you know." And I'm just like, no, we don't know that. You know, he's like, well, that's the best models, and I'm like, right. And the history of science shows you that the fucking models are wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever the models say is not like it was. So I don't know. It is an interesting thing to watch that kind of thing happen. These people who have this a priori, you know, like vision or assumption about the place, like that it's an necropolis, and so everything they do is focused on this idea, even though there's no evidence for it.
Yeah.
So all through the article, you hear them talking about tomb, like the tomb was never discovered, as though they know that it's there, and they just haven't found it yet. The way that sentence is phrased implies that the tomb exists and just hasn't been found.
Right.
The
exactly.
tomb has not
been found. That's
right.
Like, the tomb.
The tomb. Yeah. As though that's what I'm saying. It's like they are assuming it's there.
So here's something I haven't looked into yet, but I was curious. Like, with the pyrite, they're using pyrite.
Yeah.
Fool's gold for all this stuff. So, if they were able to make spheres, coat clay with pyrite, like how are they? What are they?
Pyrite's a crystal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, is it a metal or a crystal?
No,
it's like a rock.
Yeah, it's like mica or something.
It's not a metal.
Yeah.
I don't know. But how are they manipulating it? How are they making a sphere out of it and coating clay? And they don't even talk about that. So there's no physicist stepping forward and being like, wow, they must have had this type of technology in order to manipulate this pyrite. Or maybe it's really easy to manipulate it. I don't know.
Maybe it was just wet clay and they were just jamming pieces of it into the wet clay. That doesn't sound like coding though.
Yeah.
Like I was wondering the same thing about the ceiling. You were saying that they embedded pyrite in the ceiling. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, they put like little pieces of it in there.
Into what?
I don't know.
Is it dirt?
I don't know. So.
That's right. It is iron.
So
pyrite.
you can melt it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the program observer has told us that it's iron pyrite, which is metallic, grows in crystalline form. So technically, you could melt it down and coat something with it, but you would need good metallurgy.
Which didn't they have metallurgy though? Like,
well, it's the same guys that were doing the stuff that has keystone cuts in it. Then yeah, because they were pouring metal into those cuts, and like that old temple, the pyramid of Kukulkan is that same kind of megalithic construction. I don't know if it has keystone cuts, but
did they have like when have we discovered like other metal artifacts and stuff like other than gold? You know,
they're very rare. I don't know specifically from down there though. I mean, yeah, there's metal stuff, but it's copper usually or bronze.
Yeah, and gold is obviously like with copper and gold, you can find both of those like complete.
Yeah,
you don't have to smelt them.
Right. Yeah.
But pyrite, like.
But we know that they were, at least at some point in the past, the ability was there because of the keystone cuts. They may not have any metal in them anymore because that's the first thing that gets taken. Somebody sees it and pulls it out of there to hammer it into a knife or whatever. But anybody who has a portable smelter is pretty advanced.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have. Can you think of any field equipment where you're like, I just want to be able to pour molten metal into stuff? You know.
2,000 degrees Fahrenheit is the melting point of pyrite.
Iron pyrite. That's high. What is that? I was seeing something about the towers that are in Peru, those big towers, and there was some people talking about the possibility that they were smelters. That's what they were for. That's why there's no.
Yeah.
You could like dump ore in there, and then but you would need a coal fire. You have to have coal to get the fire hot enough.
Yeah.
You need like 3,000 degrees. But I just can't imagine. I mean, like, what were they pouring that molten metal out of? Who was carrying it? What? How did that work?
Stone basin.
Yeah, but still, it's gonna be hot.
Yeah. Leather. Can hold on to it for a very short time.
Right. I can carry this with my very advanced butt flap.
Well, okay, so I don't really know all of the standard model history of the pyramids down there and the cultures.
Yeah.
I actually know very little about the Mayan, Aztecs, Incas, all that
Well,
stuff.
I can tell you that about Teotihuacan, they don't know.
Yeah, I sort of go with the blanket assumption that
They're wrong.
they don't really, that they're probably wrong. They don't really know how old they are, and we've talked about this before, like how cultures could have moved in there,
Yes.
and found the structures.
And then added stuff and
So that's kind of what I roll with that possibility in mind.
Yeah, that's with Teotihuacan, I know that they don't know who built it. This is why they keep thinking they're going to find a tomb. This is why they want to find one so bad, because it'll if they can find some people that are buried beneath these large structures. In other words, where you can say that it's not intrusive,
Yeah.
Like this is not an intrusive burial. This dude isn't just like laying on the side in a hallway or whatever. He's like in the central room at in a tunnel that is hidden beneath this pyramid. So it's like, But if they had found that, let's say that they had found a sarcophagus at the end of down in one of those antechamber rooms where the maps are, and it was just like sort of sitting on top of the Mercury topo thing, they would still have said it was him, and that would obviously be intrusive because it was like put down on the map.
Right. So this is the other thing. If they had liquid mercury, they had pretty advanced melting capability. Because mercury comes as a solid.
It's
a salt.
Yeah, it's called cinnabar. It's like it's a red salt-like thing. Yeah. And you do have to have. You basically heat that up to ridiculous temperatures, and the liquid mercury starts to come out.
Oh, really? That's all it takes.
Well, that's what I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it doesn't take. You don't have to have chemistry, but you got to have it. You got to get it really hot.
And you have to know. Well, I guess they might have some volcanoes somewhere.
No, I think you're right. You have to know that it will turn into this weird silver.
Like, hey, look, I found these red rocks. Throw them in the fire.
Yeah.
Holy shit! Look at that silver water coming out of
It
it.
would seem like magic, wouldn't it? You got this weird red crystalline-looking thing, and you put it in fire, and it comes out as this silvery metal. That would be weird.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a great mystery right down there. It's not too far from here.
Yeah, I wonder if it's possible to get in that tunnel.
Oh no, it had collapsed like 2 or 3 times while they were in the middle of excavations, and they'd come back and it would be collapsed, and so they deemed it too dangerous so they have built this virtual tour that you can take if you're there. I'm like, well then freaking put it online.
Yeah, assholes.
Nope.
Okay. Oh, okay. Piece of paper.
Oh yeah, so you have to have. Okay, so it takes about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit to melt
Cinnabar.
to melt cinnabar, but you have to actually distill the vapor to get the mercury. That's
Yeah,
right.
that makes sense.
Mercury vapor is deadly as well.
That's right.
So you have to have a badass distillery.
Yeah.
On top of
And a
your
fucking
badass freaking.
and a hazmat butt flap.
Yeah. You're gonna have a has flap.
Haz flap. That's right. Hazardous materials butt flap.
Okay, so if you have the means to distill, like that's
Pretty.
that's pretty badass shit. But just to make some whiskey or whatever,
Right.
You have to have very specific temperatures to get the right vapor going up, and then you don't want the other vapors that you don't want going up in there.
And you got to know how to make tubes.
But of course, liquid mercury won't mix pretty much anything with gold.
Right. Yeah. It is inescapable with all the gold.
But still, like that's pretty impressive that they were able to like.
I wonder what the distillation process looks like. Can you just collect the vapor on something and have it run down, or like you're distilling water, or do you have to,
I'm pretty sure it would have to be a closed system where I mean, I guess if you had enough of it, you'd collect some if you were losing a bunch of vapor anyway.
Well, what makes it condensate, I guess, is the question.
cooling down.
Cooling. So you could just have it condensate onto something above it and just run down the sides.
So maybe that's what they did. Like they dug these huge tunnels under the pyramids. They took a bunch of cinnabar down there. They created this massive fire using coal. They threw all the cinnabar in there, and the guys that did that died. And then later, they covered up the cave, and then later they came back, and they had liquid mercury in the bottom.
Yeah.
And they cleaned it all out.
And they thought it was the souls of the dudes that died.
Yeah, and they cleaned it all out, and then those guys died.
So then they were like, fuck this tunnel, and they filled it with trash.
That's right. But before they did any of that, they carved a map into the bottom of the tunnel.
Well, that actually is interesting. Like, when you were talking about it before, you were saying that the pyramid of Kukulkan has all this script on it, has writing on it, or hieroglyphs or something, right, embedded into it. Isn't that what you're saying? And that the artifacts they found had these same symbols?
Yeah. Okay, so they found a whole bunch of seashells, some conch shells and stuff that came from the Pacific coast, or the Gulf Coast and the Pacific Coast, I believe, in the Atlantic. That all had like Mayan hieroglyphs all over it.
Oh, okay.
That's what they said, it was Mayan. So they were like, oh, okay, so there's definitely a connection with the Mayan culture, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, the connection is thousands of years later, the Mayans found it.
And threw seashells down there.
Right.
After their guys went down there and died.
They were having oyster parties down there. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. So, like, there's.
But the pyramid does have this type of hieroglyph that is, I can't remember what they were saying. It's like it's a distinct type that no one's ever translated.
Okay, but they say it's Mayan.
No, the seashells they found down in the tunnel had Mayan hieroglyphs.
Okay. I thought I remembered you saying that the pyramid had something on it, and then they were also finding artifacts that had the same.
Right. So I don't know about that.
Okay.
I just read. I know that the pyramid has like
Something that's never been
hieroglyphs that have not been translated yet.
Okay.
Some hieroglyphic writing. So that's why they think that pyramid is older than all the other ones.
Yeah.
But down in the tunnel, they found all these other artifacts that are from different. I mean, they found arrowheads and stuff. You know, they found just like 100, like I said, 100,000 different things. So they, you know, I guess they're saying the Mayans knew about this tunnel.
Yeah.
Or something.
Well, okay, so here's a guess. It's just a guess. But some incredibly ancient advanced culture makes the pyramid and the tunnel and the maps at the back with the mercury. A long time later, more primitive but more recent cultures begin to find it, discover the tunnel, and then people die down in that tunnel. So they begin to think that the gods are back there. So they start throwing artifacts into the tunnel to appease, whatever god of death is back there, right? And the god of death is back there because mercury vapor is back there. You can have mercury in an enclosed area for a long time, and you have mercury vapor in the air. So that's why it's crammed full of artifacts that are from all over the place.
Yeah.
They're offerings
And dirt. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, there's one picture of this little robotic, Gantenbrink thing cruising back in there, and it's riding on top of this pile of dirt, and then the ceiling of the thing is just right above it. So they like filled it in.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember reading about ceremonies with the cenotes, the deep, the water,
The wells, or the natural wells.
Yeah.
Artesian wells.
And how so archaeologists will dive into that water and go down to the bottom where there's all this silt or whatever, and it's just, they are full. I mean, the things can be actually really deep where they would go down many, many more feet, but it's been filled up over hundreds of years by people throwing in things, just, presumably as
sacrifices.
I mean, it is a if you throw something valuable into a bottomless pit, it's a sacrifice.
Yeah, when you're walking in the mall and there's like a fountain, and you come up to the fountain, you look down in there, and there's all of this metal, little round pieces of metal. Those are sacrifices.
Yeah, I've dove in those before to dig those out. It's very interesting. Find coins from 10 years ago.
Yeah. We're still doing the same shit.
Right. Yeah, throwing the wishing well idea, but those things, like I was saying, they would be full, like it could be enormous, like sinkhole full of water, and but the bottom will be like 20 feet below the surface of the water, but it's actually 100 feet deep. It's just filled up with silt and artifacts and bones and people too. They throw people in there as well.
Yeah. I remember one of them had like a bunch of kids.
Yeah, a lot of kids. Babies. Yeah, and those sinkholes are strange too. The water has different levels. Like I was reading papers written by this guy who dove in a lot of them. And he would say like the surface looks disgusting. It's just nasty looking, whatever. And you dive in, it's all warm and just gross.
Like Ernst Naha.
Yeah. But then he said you'd swim down, you get down maybe 6 to 8 feet, and then it just suddenly boom, come out. It's clear and cold, right? And then you can see all the way to the bottom. But as you're swimming down, you keep passing these thermal layers. You know, the water gets warm again, and then it gets freezing, and then it gets like,
weird.
Yeah. Because I guess it's just sitting there, and it separates itself by temperature over time.
But it's weird that you would have warm layers below the cold layers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you know, sometimes there will be springs inside and stuff too, but yeah, it's very strange. But that's what it reminded me of, that tunnel full of artifacts. And especially when you mentioned arrowheads, I'm thinking like, because they would sacrifice things that, you know, you go to battle with some other group that you don't know.
Yeah.
You take some of their shit and throw it in there too and sacrifice some of them. So it's very interesting.
But no human remains.
Right, you were saying it was just animals.
Yeah. Some animal bones. It's weird.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, yeah, so again, Program Observer is telling us that Teotihuacan, the translation of that means the place where the gods were made or created, or place. Or now that I'm thinking about it, I remember somebody saying it was the place where men become gods was another possible translation of it. Yeah, and there's nothing in that about dead people either, which is true. Yeah. Right, but the question is like why does it mean that? Like, you know, why does it mean the place where men become gods or where gods were created or whatever? Like, what is that talking about? A school? Like, think of gods in the context of like how we've been discussing it on this show about
Like magicians and
yeah,
wizards and stuff.
right, ancient peoples who were advanced. So
Yeah, that's cool. The other thing I think of is the pyramid of the plumed serpent. So like, you know, a feathered serpent
right,
is like a dinosaur. Like the recent discoveries
Yeah.
of dinosaurs is like, oh wait, they're not bare skinned.
right. They're not lizards, they're birds.
They're birds. Big snake birds.
Yeah,
Like that's badass, dude.
plumed serpent. Have we ever talked about the Ica stones on the show? I can't remember if we've talked about
I
them
don't know.
before.
I don't. What are they? The Inca stones?
Like Ica.
Ica,
I don't know how they're
okay.
pronounced. It's ICA. It's just
Okay.
yeah, ICA. I call them Ica stones, or maybe it's Ica. I don't know, but tens of thousands of them have been found, and they're beautiful. Okay, they're small. Some of them are little. Some of them are palm size. Some of them are, you know, maybe a foot long or whatever. But they're all very smooth, rounded, like they're like river rock. They don't have sharp edges. They're all very rounded, like they were in floods or in riverbeds and stuff. But they're made of really hard stone. I think they're diorite, andesite. Okay, and they are. Every single one of them has this are carved with these different scenes. Okay, and you can tell by looking, like when you look at a picture of a bunch of them, like hundreds of them, you can see that it's the same style of art on all of them. It's a very distinctive kind of style, but somebody has carved into them, like just using outlines. Okay, so the stone has this. There'll be a guy carved in, and he's hunting a deer or whatever. But some of them have scenes that are like there are people riding dinosaurs.
Oh shit.
Like literally, there's one where this dude is like riding on a flying dinosaur. Okay, he's like sitting just behind the neck, and it's obviously a winged prehistoric. It's enormous.
It's a Quetzalcoatlus.
Yeah, there are other ones of people doing heart surgery. There are ones of people using telescopes to look at stars. And these things are old. Okay, so
But are the stones all different shapes?
yeah, they're all different shapes, and there are tens of thousands of them. Like
And where are they found?
I can't remember exactly where, but I remember the story. I think it might be in Mexico, but no, it's Peru. It's got to be Peru. What's that? Okay, yeah, the Ica province of Peru. So the story basically is that like there was a big storm or a flood or something, and that opened up the place where these stones were in some kind of cave, and so the people who were finding them were basically, you know, they were poor people, they were peasants, they were just farmers that lived in the area, and they started to bring them to show people. And one of the doctors in town, he was educated and everything, like he got very interested in them, and he would buy them from the guy, okay, and he bought thousands of them over time. And he has this enormous museum now of the Ica stones, and they're just everywhere in shelves all over his house. But there was kind of a controversy because they're depicting impossible things for the standard model, right? So you can't have ancient carvings of people using telescopes. You can't have ancient carvings of people doing heart surgery.
Because of course they didn't have crystals,
right,
to look through.
Yeah, there is actually a whole other separate problem of lenses, of carved lenses.
Yeah, you have to have a curved butt flap in order to build a telescope. A transparent curved butt flap.
Right, you have to know spherical trigonometry, which...
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
BT Dub, they just found
out
that
the Sumerians knew spherical trigonometry. Yeah.
3000 BC.
Yeah.
Tablet with badass, like even using the sexagesimal system or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
Spherical trigonometry that's like more precise than the model than the
original Greek ones that that we thought that it came from.
And it's actually easier to use than the ones we use today because we're using base 10.
That's right.
But yeah, they didn't.
They could do that, yeah. But the biggest problem really was the people with dinosaurs. Like, you can't have ancient people depicting dinosaurs, even if there's nobody riding them. They shouldn't be able to depict dinosaurs because they don't know what they are.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
That's what I think about dragons, dude. Like, where does this legend of these flying friggin' serpents come from?
Probably the flying serpents.
Yeah, that's right. How did we get legends of ancient, massive flying serpents? From the ancient, massive flying serpents. Yeah, so there's more to the Ica stones. We can continue that after we take this quick break for snake bites.
And that's probably how they smelted their metals with the ancient flying fire-breathing serpents.
That's right. Yeah, you don't need technology. You just need a dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Snake break. Snake break. Snake.
Podcast, talking about ancient shit and lies, falsehoods, deception, demons and serpents, flying serpents, scriptards. Damn it, I gotta speed mine up. Angels and demons and monsters and serpents. I don't work on it enough. I'm sorry.
You need to memorize the one that you had the
Yeah.
That was a good one. I did it that one time. It's hard to memorize all that. I don't remember.
Yeah. I haven't done my homework, folks, but I have been looking at pyramids and stars.
Yeah.
And I finally got to a point where I've been observing the long term. Yeah, I can tell. I've been observing the long term cycle of the stars long enough to where I finally am at a point where I can just like I'm getting it. Because before it's just like I've got to wait a year before I can notice this again and sort of compare my memory to what I'm seeing. And it's coming to pass. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
And the same thing's happening on the farm.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the grapevines in the vineyard.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I remember this. And I'm really getting, like, after we did the pruning,
yeah,
seeing what they're doing, and we had that specialist, Bill Blackman,
Right.
come out and like,
You're doing it wrong.
we were, basically tell us we were doing it wrong. But this time I understood.
Yeah.
Well,
The first time you were there, I had no idea what you were
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
He's come 3 times, and this time was like the first time I didn't understand what was going on. The second time I kind of got a little bit about how badly I was doing it wrong.
Right.
This time I totally understood how I was completely fucking it
That's
up.
right. See, that's how science goes. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I thought this was interesting because I was talking to Laura about this, and she's been doing the same thing with flowers, like when flowers bloom. And she's been paying attention to it for a while, and she's like, okay, so when this colored flower starts blooming, she sees them on the roadsides. She knows, like, oh, okay, the next flower there's going to be this type is coming, like, soon. She's starting to memorize, like, but then some crazy weather event will happen and their patterns might change.
Yeah.
And
And then she can recognize it.
yeah. So I was thinking, like, dude, we're both like working on these sort of what I'm calling long-term memory, like long-term cycle memorization. And I'm doing it with the stars, constellations, and the motions of the stars in the sky and the moon and the sun. And also with the growth of these plants on in the vineyard and at the orchard.
Yeah.
She's doing it with the flowers, and I was like, dude, we could, like, if we get, after many years, like your observations compared to my observations on the farm, and then
Yeah.
compared to the, we could fucking write a book about that shit.
Yeah.
Like using the colors of flowers blooming to tell you like what is going on with the seasons and
Yeah.
the types of, I don't know. I just thought those
Seasons?
kind of cool.
But there's also a cycle that like it gets cooler. You know, it starts to get cooler.
Yeah,
I've noticed that every few hours or so it gets dark or it gets light.
yeah.
Gotta start with those, man.
I got those down pretty well. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like,
Will you follow?
wait a minute,
wrong
what day,
part.
What day is it?
Yeah. I completely lost a day last week. Totally lost a day last week. I thought it was Monday and it was
They'll be
Tuesday.
back.
No, I thought it was Tuesday and it was Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yep.
hate it when that happens.
That was because of a holiday, though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But I don't remember doing stuff on the holiday day. Like,
Yeah. Oh, you don't remember? doing
okay,
it
so
on
I texted
holiday
you. I was
day?
like, "Are we working today?" It was Tuesday. I thought it was Monday.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I completely lost. I missed the holiday. Was the day that I missed.
Maybe
Like,
you worked on Saturday, week before.
Maybe. Yeah.
But just connecting this to telescopes and dinosaurs and pyramids.
Yeah. It's like the three greatest things ever.
How well these ancient civilizations had these long-term cycles freaking down.
Oh, they had them down. Yeah.
We've talked about it, like with precession. Like I'm 35, discovering precession.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to observe it.
Right.
Really, I might.
When you turn 72, you'll know
That 1
that
degree
that star is a degree off from
Yeah.
when you were born.
but I would not have.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be anywhere close to being able to actually observe that or discover it for myself.
Right.
So just getting these patterns of the year, the motions of the stars throughout the year, and
Yeah.
the sun and the sky. I've been around for 35 years and not really paid much attention to it. And then when I learned about it from some ancient wisdom, then I start to try to notice it. And you have to be very diligent.
Yeah.
Like if I was really diligent, I'd be getting up before sunrise every day
Yeah.
to watch it, and then going to a place where I could see it.
Right. And you also have to know
Watching the sunset.
You also have to know how to cut out the smaller cycles because it's cycles embedded in cycles. It's like those Russian dolls, right? They're all inside of each other.
Yeah.
So you're in a cycle that's inside of a bigger cycle that's inside of a bigger cycle that's inside of a bigger cycle.
Yeah.
And the only way to look at the larger cycles on the outside is to cut out all those ones that are
Right,
in
right,
between.
right.
And the only way to do that is to look at the sun at the same time, at the same place in the sky every day. You have to only look at it for this particular time. You have to do that the same time every day. So at 4 o'clock, you go outside and you watch the sun for 1 minute, right?
Yeah.
And then you do that every day. That cuts out the day cycle, so that you're now basically those observations, when strung together, represent just the sun in this one spot. And you remove the day cycle from the equation.
Right.
To do that with precession, you have to remove the year.
Right, which is why they call it the procession of the equinoxes.
Right, you have to go out there and
on
look
the
at
equinox.
it at one time, at the same time of day, during the same time in the year, every freaking time. You have to do that over and over and over until you begin to get a picture. So it's this is one of the reasons why it's hard to describe, to explain it to people when when I was having that argument about how they were like, well, it doesn't move the stars around in the sky. I'm like, well, yes, it does. They don't move relative to each other, but they move relative to the Earth.
Right. Their position changes relative to.
And the guy was like, well, it just shifts the seasons and they come up. And I'm like, yeah, that's the same thing.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of pointless to have an argument with someone when it's obvious they just don't understand it.
Right. Or when with him, it seemed more like he understood it. He's a high level troll. What? Because the guy's really smart and he totally understands precession. When he said like it makes the constellations rise at different seasons, that is moving the stars around in the sky. And he knows that.
Right, okay, I see. Semantics.
Yeah. But the way he's phrasing it, it's not, it's different. It's like when I say that, like, the Orion correlation is about waiting, rewind the time until the stars mirror the surface, and he's like, well, it doesn't do that, even though he knows that it does.
I see.
That's why I was saying he's a troll. But it's not, troll may be the wrong word. He's a disinformation agent. He's not talking to me. He's there for everyone else that reads the conversation, trying to throw them off this trail.
Yeah. Conspiracies.
Yeah. Well, it was on ATS.
That's where they
Born and bred.
That's right.
All right. So what were we talking about?
We got the rest of the Ika stones, which is a fascinating. Eventually, the farmer guy who was selling he was finding most of them and selling them to the doctor and to tourists and everything. He's making pretty good money selling to tourists.
Yeah, we talked about this before.
Did we?
Yeah.
Those are the sculptures. That's different.
Oh, okay.
But it's different, but it's close to the same thing. Thousands and thousands and thousands of those sculptures, and there are dinosaurs and everything in them. They've got little sculptures of dinosaurs and stuff. But this is a different place, and they're carved rocks. They're rounded.
Yeah. I thought I was just totally thinking it was the same deal. That story you told.
I don't think so.
He'd sold a bunch of them, and then he said they were all fakes.
Yeah. But I thought we were talking about the sculptures at that point.
We may have been. I don't know if you were telling the story.
Yeah. Well, what I'm interested in is, where did these come from?
Yeah.
Like when the authorities brought him in, they were gonna throw the book at him for selling artifacts, because it's like in Peru, it's like massively against. It's like a massive felony to sell any kind of historical artifacts to anybody that belong to the state, because gay communism or whatever. The proletariat owns all those artifacts. But there's a huge penalty for it. He would have been in jail, so he basically, quote unquote, confessed to having forged them, making them himself. And so, but the way it was presented was like, they arrested him and then he confessed to having forged all the artifacts there, and that's what they don't tell you that, like, if he didn't confess that, he would be in jail for the rest of his fucking life.
Yeah.
They don't tell you that part. So it's like, and then other people later were starting to question, like, how did one guy make it? There was thousands of them.
Yeah.
And it's hard stone. So apart from what they depict, like the question of whether a farmer knows what open heart surgery looks like, or whether a farmer can accurately depict constellations that are in the southern hemisphere, or I'm sorry, in the northern hemisphere, because Peru's in the southern hemisphere. And whether a peasant farmer knows all this stuff about dinosaurs and gets the anatomy correct of all these different dinosaur species. Aside from that, like, how did one guy carve all these freaking rocks?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter around. Anywhere you go, you'll see standard modelists saying, like, the Ika stones are debunked. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even have to consider them. And really, they never have been considered. That's the real problem with this. Is like now they'll say, oh well, they've been debunked. You ought to consider them mythic. But the problem is that before they were debunked, no one was considering them either because what they implied was
Yeah.
unpalatable.
Well, what does it imply that there's some carved stone in South America that's extremely ancient and has a northern hemisphere constellation in it?
What does that imply?
Yeah, I mean, whoever carved it
Traveled.
either that or they had maps.
Yeah.
What do they call them? Constellation maps or whatever. That he could have copied it from.
Oh yeah.
So somebody had to have traveled there.
right. If they're ancient.
And whoever traveled there had to have,
Right. So
knowledge.
the first problem you run into is the traveling. Like, mainstream archaeology is isolationist.
Yeah.
There can't be diffusionism between cultures.
That's cool. But the real question is, who was flying on dinosaurs? Damn it.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Yeah, that's a great one. Like the dude's flying on this huge giant, he's got a knife, and now he's all like, yeah, I've got this knife, but I don't need it because I've got a dinosaur.
So aren't there stories of like these people have pulled up in their nets or fishing boats and pulled up like these carcasses of
A worthy opponent.
Yeah,
Of
enormous
sea dinosaurs, like these massive like sea dinosaurs or whatever that are supposedly extinct.
Yeah, there's one that definitely looks like a plesiosaur, like a partially decayed plesiosaur, which is the like big brontosaurus but with fins.
Yeah, and they like dropped it because it smelled so bad.
Yeah, it smelled horrible. Yeah, they dropped it, but they got some pictures where the thing is basically laid out on the fishing boat. You know, it's so huge. That a bunch of it's down in the water, but you can see that it's got a fin, and and of course the standard answer is like it's a whale. It's a freaking whale because it's so decayed it doesn't look like a whale anymore. It just looks like a monster. They call them blobsters.
Lobsters?
Yeah, because sometimes these things wash up on shore and it's like this enormous. Or it's globsters, not globsters. Because this is an enormous glob of shit. It's just like and there's weird. I've got pictures of them. They're really strange looking, and somebody inevitably figures out a way to prove that it's a whale, or to claim that it's a whale. But it's always like, where's the whale? I know that whales are very large and they have lots of organic stuff in them, and then if you take away the skin and sort of mix everything up and let it float in the ocean for a couple of years, it might look weird. But there should still be some recognizable, when a human is decaying, you can always recognize this is a human.
Yeah.
But I guess whales are just long, oblong shapes. Don't
they have teeth? Come on.
Some of them do. With baleen, though. Baleen they don't have any teeth. They just have those. They look like the gill flesh or whatever. It's a strainer basically for plankton. And they just inhale tons of water and strain the plankton out.
How do you ride in the belly of these guys? Anyway,
It'd have to be a tooth whale or a UFO.
Yeah. So do you think that dinosaurs could still be living, like some species of them?
You think robots are living among us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, because the ocean is enormous.
What about on land? Like the Amazon and, just all of this.
And in Africa, there's actually I can't remember the details right now, but there's a place in Africa where the natives there are like deathly afraid of this creature. I can't remember what they call it.
Don't step on the cracks.
But the way they described it, it sounded like a type of dinosaur. And so some anthropologists went down there with some children's picture books of dinosaurs and started flipping through it. And they were all pointing at one, and there's this one particular one, and they're like, that's the thing, whatever it was.
Yeah.
White devil. And I can't remember what kind of dinosaur it was. I'm thinking it's the one that has the club for a tail.
Yeah.
Right? It's enormous.
Club with the spikes on it.
Think of like a giant armadillo with the club tail that it can, it's got huge balls. It's enormous like bone spheres on the back or whatever. I don't think it's spikes. It's just club. It's a club. But yeah, I think that's the one they were pointing out. It was something like that. So this very large creature that they claim lives back there. It's indestructible for them.
Yeah.
So
Just like the Legends of the Dragons.
yeah.
What about that? Like ancient peoples being alive when dinosaurs were like,
Yeah, see, I disagree for the most part with the idea that all dinosaurs died 65 million years ago during the KT event. Now, I do think the KT event happened, and that it killed off a shitload of species of dinosaurs. It was a mass extinction, but I'm not so sure it was 65 million years ago. Because, like, okay, so for instance, in Wyoming, there's an enormous fossil bed where it's in the shale where they dig up the dinosaurs, and there's just thousands and thousands of them there. But when you go out there, it smells like decay. You smell it.
Oh yeah.
And they've been able to extract blood samples from the bone that have intact paternal DNA, which is...
And they reproduce them in frogs
They probably already
on
have.
an island somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Turn it into a park.
Nature finds a way. Or life. But yeah, so DNA like degrades really quickly. You just drew some blood and you just put it in a vial and set it on a shelf. In a week it'll have fallen apart. So you can preserve it in different ways, right? But it isn't going to preserve for 65 million fucking years.
Yeah.
So if you seal it in shale, and the shale is sort of filled with, or sort of, the shale's embedded in oil, basically. Okay, it's shale oil, right? So you seal it in shale stone, and then you bury you embed the shale stone in oil. That'll probably preserve it for a long time, but not 65 million years.
Yeah.
I mean that's also a question about the hydrocarbons too, because they start falling apart. You put gasoline into a tank and then you leave it for a year, it isn't going to be gas anymore.
Right.
They'll have broken down.
Right.
So how old are these oils really? These crude oils that are under the ground? Can they last that long before breaking down?
I don't know.
But
Sure as hell, like when they get dumped into the ocean, they vanish.
yeah, the red tide eats it.
But I've always been fascinated by the dragon sort of culture or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
And there's people riding on them or whatever, like
Yeah,
this depiction.
There have been, I can't remember which one it is specifically, but there are large dinosaur skulls that have unexplained cavities in them, right? Like it looks like it's part of the sinus structure or whatever. Like there's all these unexplained cavities. Like what are these for? Well, there's one in particular where they were saying that this could be some form of defense system, and they were saying that like it could build up methane in its stomach or whatever, and then it could like basically store that in these little chambers, and then it could if it was in a fight or whatever, it could spew it out, and if it could spark it into a fire somehow with the teeth, clack the teeth together and lights it
Yeah,
up.
or even a chemical reaction.
Yeah, chemical
with its
reaction.
saliva.
Yeah. So I don't know. I remember when we were at the museum and we were looking at the Triceratops that has that huge helmet on, but when you look at the skull, the bones or whatever, there's these two enormous oval holes in the big flange of the helmet, right? And they were saying that the museum was talking about how they thought that those were giant listening devices.
Yeah.
That it could hear this
Like
it could hear this enormous range of frequencies because they had this thin skin stretched tight across these two oval holes on this, and it could,
Oh my God,
that was just
badass.
awesome. Yeah. So like,
Dude,
yeah. The old Triceratops.
radio antennas.
Yeah, Triceratops could hear that. He could hear that bass.
Please.
Yeah, he could hear the Tyrannosaurus Rex running from thousands of miles away.
Oh man. God, it's so badass,
Yeah.
dude.
So yeah, I don't know that the symbol of the dragon is also the comet. That you got
Right.
the fire breathing, this flying thing in the sky.
Right. Fiery serpent.
Right. But That's more like the world snake or whatever. It's not something they associate with Earth so much as it is. It's a god figure. But you know, like you seen that Chinese festival where they have the enormous long dragon? I look at that now and I'm like, that's a comet. You know, the way that they run with it down the street or whatever, and it's kind of a celebration of it. It's this huge festival
with fireworks.
Yeah, with fireworks and shit. Yeah, that's a remembrance of some enormous impact event. Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I learned about that sort of that idea from Randall Carlson and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like to entertain the idea that dinosaurs did not, or maybe some of them survived later.
They're really talking Disney dragons. Yeah.
Later than we assumed, and that people lived amongst them.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
So going back to the Ica stones, that's the idea. It's not that humans were around 65 million years ago, but the dinosaurs were here a lot more recently than people think.
Yeah. Because if they were more recently, but not long enough to be fossilized, but long enough for...
Well, those Ica stones could be 30,000 years old.
Traveling light.
Yeah.
He found them in a cave, and there's tens of thousands of them. What are they? It's a hall of records, whatever it is.
They were all in one cave?
Yeah, they're all in one
Holy
place.
Shit.
When you go read about the doctor who owns the museum or whatever, where he's got them all, he talks about it, about how the guy said that they just started spilling out of the hill after this rainstorm flood thing or whatever. They just started pouring out of and so it's an enormous cave that's just it's packed with them.
Oh my god.
It's a hall of records. Somebody took the time to record all of these scenes in a way that you don't have to be able to read their writing to see what's happening. You can see it. That this guy, if you don't understand heart surgery, you can still see that there's a person laying down and they're doing something to try to fix him or whatever. And it shows you the scars. And it's recording all of these things that people did, And it's hard to claim that it's fiction, because if it was fiction, whoever was doing it was like magically correct on all this stuff. They somehow got all these things right. If it was fictional, they shouldn't have known.
Yeah.
Like like I said, the anatomy of the dinosaurs is all correct.
Yeah, constellations and all that.
Yeah, and then like the Stegosaurus, like all the plates on its back, it's all you can see them all perfect. They just depict them correctly. Like we only know this because we've dug up skeletons and taken all this time to do science and put them together.
Right. How did they do it?
Yeah.
There could have been ancient archaeologists or paleontologists or whatever.
Yeah. But the other stuff they're doing, is just, like the telescope. Like the dude has actually got a freaking telescope and he's looking at the sky through this long tapering tube. It doesn't show you any lenses or anything like that, but you can see what looks like little knobs on it, like focus devices. So, and the art of making a lens that's hard.
Right.
To grind that lens perfectly to get the perfect convex or concave, not easy.
And that was only like a pretty recent discovery in modern times.
Yeah, the ability to do it correctly.
Right.
Yeah. But again, there have been ancient ones found that are disputed because they can't be, like ancient lenses, made out of crystal. They're just perfectly badass or whatever, and they claim that it's a happenstance. It just happened to be like that. That can't be actually an ancient artifact that somebody made, because that doesn't fit the story. There's a bunch of those. They're basically out of place artifacts that just don't fit, and so every single one of them is script curved in some way. My favorite out of place artifact is the Nampa figurine. You know about that one? The little doll. It's not a doll really. It looks like if you look at it, it looks like I always think of a gingerbread cookie cutout. It's obviously a humanoid form, but it isn't a doll. It's not articulated. You can't move it around. And it's small, but it was the place where it was found. They were drilling a well, so it was they were drilling like with modern equipment. So they had a well truck that has a drill on the back, and they keep adding pipe to it to make it deeper and deeper. They were in, I think it was in, well, I don't even name the state. It was somewhere in the Midwest, I'm pretty sure it was like, but they were drilling, and so most of the time when you're drilling a well, if people don't know, for the purposes of geology, every 10 feet or 15 feet or whatever, it'll be the same amount every time. They'll pull core samples out so after they've been drilling for a while, you'll see all these little piles of material, right? They drill down 10 feet and they pull out a pile of the material, and they'll sort of put a little pile of it right here. That's the sample at 10 feet, and then they'll make a sample at 20, and then another sample at 30, and they just line them all up, right? So they were at 300 feet. They had drilled through 2 layers of basalt that are a layer of basalt is basically a lava flow, okay?
Right.
So you got a 40-foot thick layer of basalt, and you know that because you've drilled wells all over the state, you know that it extends for hundreds of miles in every direction. That at some point in the past, that entire area was covered in a lava flow that ended up in 40-foot thick basalt, okay? So those are considered, I can't remember the technical term for it, but those types of things are considered to be like a seal. Anything below that is there because it was there before that lava came.
Right.
Okay. They had gone through 2 of those, and then at the 310-foot mark or whatever, they pull up the sample, and this little figurine is in it.
Oh my god.
So
That's crazy, dude.
yeah. So of course, when you go look at the geology of it, it puts that figurine at being hundreds of millions of years old. And
Yeah. So it's either we, like, anatomically modern humans have been around and civilized on and off for an
as long
insane
as the
amount of
planet's
time.
been here, basically.
Yeah, or they've got the timeline all wrong.
Right.
They don't, and I think it's more realistic to assume that the timeline is all wrong, because that is to determine the actual timeline just from the little amount of time we have been looking at layers of rock and
right. And
studying
even when they're using things like decay rates of radioactive particles, that's assuming that the decay rate is constant.
Right.
Yeah. And that environmental factors, or even environmental factors of where the solar system is in the galaxy, doesn't change that.
Right.
So, because the physicists will tell you, like, well, I dated this, and like, this is how old it is. And it's like, yeah, it's that old if the decay rate is constant on that uranium.
Right.
So that's why I've thought for a long time now that I just don't think the KT event was 65 million years ago. There could have been dinosaurs on this planet 65 million years ago. But I don't think that they all died 65 million years ago, and I think that mass extinction event that killed off a bunch of them was not 65 million years ago, because they still stink. It's just not, it's just not really. That shouldn't be possible. Over 65 million years, it should be completely fossilized. There should be no organics left, and any organics, even if there was some organics left, it should have broken down.
Yeah.
So, but the problem with that is once you start to say, okay, well that makes sense, then suddenly you lose this. You become like I was trying to characterize it as like we're like an island of 6,000 years floating in an unknown void. Like we don't know how long everything is, how old everything is.
12,000 years now.
Yeah, 12,000.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, but that's based on carbon dating. It's based on carbon dating, which is flawed also.
Yeah.
Cosmogenic bullshit. So I don't know. The Ica stones are fascinating because to me it points to a complete restructuring of how we understand that the entire process of life on Earth. That there is some kind of evolutionary process, but it's directed and it's not by chance, you know, and because how like their story right now is that mammals are, you know, like mammals wouldn't be here without the dinosaurs being wiped out. So why can they both coexist?
Yeah.
You know, 'cause, like in the evolutionary concept, the dinosaurs were dominant. There were mammals around at the time. I mean, I think the first mammal was supposed to be 50 million years ago, but they weren't able to come into prominence because all the mammals were little rat things and little, you know, lemurs and stuff. They couldn't get big because the dinosaurs were just
Burrowers and stuff.
yeah, they were hiding from everything all the time because the dinosaurs ruled the earth. You know, they were the enormous apex predators and the top level, even the herbivores. You know,
What do you think about the possibility that they were intelligent? Or some of them were?
I think, well, yeah, like we've talked about this before, and I was like, well, if you have like right now we're in the age of mammals, and the top level mammal is us, right? And it's always a predator because the predator's brain has to be more complicated because you got to have things like strategy and
Butt flaps and all that.
yeah, you end up with butt flaps because you got to have strategy and you got to. It's like, you know, you see an herbivore or a prey or whatever. Their eyes are on the sides of their head, whereas the predators are in the front. And we have binocular vision, so we can determine how far away things are. Because you got to be able to run up there and grab it.
Right.
You know, whereas the prey has eyes on the sides of its head, so that it can see everything.
Right.
They're just waiting for
All
you
the
to
way
come
running.
running. Yeah, he wants to see all the way around. So he
He doesn't
can see
need
you
to,
running
he
up.
doesn't need to know how close you are. He just needs to see
He's
you.
fucking running
So he can run.
That's right. But the predator has to have strategy, has to be able to hide, has to be able to conceal itself, has to be able to, you know, in some way plan out an attack. The herbivore just has to eat and look and run.
Yeah.
You know. So the idea is that any kind of advanced life form is going to be, in its past, it will have been a predator.
Is that why the alien movies are always like, they come here to destroy us?
Yeah. They're always predators, yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, if I was an alien, I would destroy the human race. Even if I didn't want Earth, I'd be like, we need to wipe them out right now. Because the potential for danger is like immense, you know? Like if they get off their asses and get rid of all those politicians that actually start doing shit, they're gonna take over the universe. We gotta kill them all now. I mean, because it was like, what, 100 years we went from horse and buggy to freaking, you know, Teslas and flying all over the planet. I mean, seriously, like, if you look at the advancement rate,
Yeah.
that should be terrifying to any alien being, you know, unless they do it too, unless it's always like that. But you have this idea of this million-year-old race, and they're very advanced, way more advanced than us, but we just got this advanced in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
We went from basically primitive to like not, you know.
But at the same time, it's like we were the same beings for the thousands of years before that when we pretty much had the same technology all this time.
Yeah.
So I love thinking about that because what happened like right before that massive like takeoff of the technology? Exactly. When we were finally free to do what we wanted,
Right,
we
and so-
kicked ass.
And so that's another answer to a possible answer to the conspiracy of like why, you know, like why is there always this attempt to sort of keep people from being able to do that shit? Well, I mean, like if there are alien races out there and they're watching us, and for whatever reason they can't, maybe they have a galactic federation and they can't just wipe us out because that would be unethical, right? They don't want us to like. They don't want us to get actually advance enough where we can notice them and, you know, all that shit or whatever because, you know,
So they send the longheads.
so they send a longhead, yeah. And what they do is they set up governments and they just put as much fucking red tape in our way as possible. In whatever way is that they can at the time. So back in the past they used tyrannies and the divine right of kings and so on and so forth. Now they use democracies and gigantic bureaucracies.
In the World Bank system. and all
Right,
that.
yeah. They just, all it is about throwing red tape in the way.
Oh, shit. We need to get some freaking andesite and start carving stones and put it in the caves. But we're gonna take a break first.
I want some universal red tape solvent. All right, we'll be back. talk about some a little bit more of this, and then maybe some more missing 411 stuff, which are also
Missing snakes.
seekers and conspirators all across the fruited plain. This is Brother of the Serpent, where we bring you a guaranteed 30% brain increase. It's like guaranteed now.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about dragons and
I believe in
pyramids and cenotes and the Ica stones. And I think now we're gonna do something completely different.
Yeah. we're gonna talk about something that maybe the dragons are causing.
That's right. But we were talking about it last episode, and we kind of ended with it. And I was saying that we should probably continue with this. It is the missing 411 subject. So, kind of picking up where I left off. Because I was basically trying to describe the profile. So over time, Politis having discovered all these different missing persons cases, and like he's gone through tens of thousands of them. Okay, he says, like, after reading tens of thousands of missing persons cases, you begin to see patterns, just like in police work. When you're looking at tons of different murder cases, you start to see patterns, right? And it can be patterns that, like, not like serial killer style patterns, but like patterns of people, of behavior, you know? And so search and rescue also has this. Search and rescue, like, if you go look at their procedures for doing search and rescue of people lost in the wilderness or whatever is based on prior patterns, right, of other people that have been lost in the, so you begin to recognize all these different patterns. And another pattern emerged when he was looking at these tens of thousands of cases that didn't fit any of the other patterns.
So it was no longer the simple, like, okay, did he go missing at the top of a cliff? Look at the bottom of the cliff.
Right.
Did he go missing upstream? Look downstream.
Right. Well, like, one thing that search and rescue will do is they have search perimeters, and the search perimeters are based on the age of the person missing and their relative health, right? So if they're a disabled person, you're not assuming that they can go very far, right? So if you
he went missing, look where he went missing.
Yeah, start where he went missing and go out from there. Yeah. So they'll draw circles on the maps, and with each passing day, they widen the circle. Okay. But the amount the circles get wider for each passing day is smaller because there's a lot of
more ground to cover.
Yeah. So one of the things that Politis noticed in the cases that he called out from the tens of thousands. So, like, another thing, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but the reason why it's called Missing 411 is because he initially was going to write a single book on the cases that they had been studying. And out of the tens of thousands of missing persons cases in the national parks that they got, 411 of them were weird to fit this profile. Okay?
I think he did mention that.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe not so directly.
Yeah, so there were 411. He ended up making that into 2 books because 411 cases was just too much for one. It would have been enormous. So he split it up into 2 books. It was basically the East and West Coasts. That was how it was split up. So East Coast and West Coast. And it was 411 cases. Now he has like something like 1,600, I think. And they're not just in the United States and Canada. They're all over the world now. Because after he published those, people started to send him missing persons cases that look like they might fit the profile. So now he's got ones in Australia. He's got them in Africa. He's got them in Indonesia and Malaysia and in the UK, and there. So basically, the phenomenon is global in scope, whatever it is. Okay, so I guess before I go off on tangents, just grabbing little pieces, I'll kind of go through the profile a little bit. So people go missing in boulder fields, And if you look at national parks in the United States, a lot of them are mountainous or in the desert areas or whatever. And there are just some places with that you know, on a map or whatever, it will call it a boulder field, which basically means what it sounds like: a bunch of enormous rocks that are very close together. So it's a field of boulders. You can't really walk among them. You have to pick your way atop them because they're all sort of, you know.
Yeah.
And their boulders generally is something that's too big for a person to move. Okay, that's. I mean, it's not really a defined term, but that's basically, you know, a rough definition of it. It's not a boulder if you can pick it up.
Yeah.
So a boulder field, and some of these rocks are enormous. You look at pictures of boulder fields from the Rockies, and they're just huge, house-sized rocks that people will climb around on and stuff. But so people go missing in boulder fields. They go missing in berry patches. You know, like wild berries growing up on a mountaintop or you know, a field up high or whatever. And it's usually huckleberries, but it doesn't have to be. But it's weird. Like people go berry picking. Like a lot of the older cases, you'll see they were berry picking, and then the person disappears from inside the berry patch. Another profile point that we did briefly touch on was the dogs won't track. They bring in bloodhounds and they just can't track the person, or they won't. They refuse to, or they go part of the way and then stop, or whatever. Or they seem to track. They seem to lead the searchers off on a trail that they consider to be impossible, like straight up the mountainside. You know. Let's see. Other profile points are if the body is recovered, if the missing person is found. You know, usually they're dead or whatever. When they're found in a place that has been previously searched numerous times. And like there are some cases where it's blatant, like where the body is found and it's laying across the trail that every search and rescue person took to get out to the search area every day.
Bye-bye, Exile.
Wow.
So that's just not, you know, like it just doesn't make any sense. Another profile point is missing boots. A lot of them are missing shoes. Their boots are gone or whatever, but also missing clothing items in general.
Don't step
And
on
when
the
Pilatus
cracks.
talks about this, he talks about how he's interviewed park rangers and search and rescue people, and park rangers have said like boots last forever. They're usually made of really sturdy, strong stuff. You know, the laces may be gone or whatever, but you can find a pair of boots out in the just sitting out in the open in the wilderness that are over, like they're 150 years old and they're still there.
Yeah.
You know, so when somebody goes missing,
Boiled leather.
yeah, when somebody goes missing and their body's recovered but the boots aren't,
Need something.
but they can never recover the boots. They can't find them. That's weird. You know, like the Rangers have said, like it's actually more common to find the boots but not the body. So finding the body but not the boots is very strange.
Yeah.
And of course, there are some cases where people were missing for a very short amount of time and are recovered, and when they're found, they're dead and their boots are gone and their pants, and you know, so it's odd. And it's like another thing is that even though some of the disappearances are children, and when you're reading the case at first, it sounds like some kind of pedophile, because you find out the little girl goes missing, and then when she's recovered, she's just in her panties, and she, you know, but they're never sexually abused. There's none of that. Well, okay, there might have been one case where that happened, and it was post-mortem, which is really strange, but it wasn't a little girl, it was a woman. But there was a bunch of strange ones about that case. She was okay. So another profile point is cliff. Like you were joking about, you know, if they went missing on the top of the cliff, look at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So another profile point is they are found at the bases. The people are found at the bases of cliffs, but they're too far from the base of the cliff. They have injuries that are kind of look like they might have fallen from that cliff, but they're too far away from the bottom of the cliff.
With no trail or
Right, like it doesn't count if the bottom of the cliff is a steep slope. Like it's like when the cliff comes down and ends and it's flat, so the body can't roll, and you know.
Yeah.
But so if you have a cliff like that where it's basically a sheer rock face going up a couple 300 or 400 feet, and then beneath it is a boulder field, but the person's corpse is recovered 100 or 120 feet away from the base of the cliff, but they have injuries that, you know, like if you read the coroner's report, it says blunt force trauma to head and shoulders. And then they just basically assume that the person fell from the cliff, where you're like, well, how did they get that far away from the base?
Yeah.
And how did somebody that fell even if they fell head first, they should have injuries on every portion of their body. Their bones should be crushed everywhere because like your head and shoulders hit, but then the rest of your body collapses on top of it. It should break your knees and your shins.
Yeah.
So they get and blunt force trauma sounds like something that somebody does to somebody. I don't know, like Brett. Do you know anything about that? Like, is it blunt force trauma? Like, can that be an accident, or is that like somebody hitting with a hammer?
I mean, it sounds like.
Engineer.
Okay. So it's anything. Right. But it can be from you falling and hitting something. Okay, because I always associate it with assault. Okay. So blunt force trauma is anything that hits you that doesn't cut. Splitting, yeah, it can cause splitting, but it's not a bladed thing. It's a blunt, yeah. Right. No piercing or slashing. Okay, yeah. So they can call it blunt force trauma if you just fall off a cliff and land on a bunch of rocks. That's blunt force trauma. But does it make sense to you that they would fall and only have blunt force trauma to the head and the shoulders? Right.
Yeah, no way in hell.
Yeah. Yeah, no way in hell is yeah. That's right. Compress the spine. It should that's what I thought too. Your arms would hit afterwards and it should break your elbows and your fingers and like your legs would collapse over you and it would crush all your You should be pulverized over every bone should be cracked and broken. I mean, just like
This job.
Yeah, human bone soup. That's right. So when people are found 100 feet away from the base of the cliff, and they have injuries to the head and shoulders only, that does not sound like somebody fell from the cliff.
Yeah.
It sounds like somebody wants people to think they fell from the cliff after they killed the guy with a hammer or whatever, or a club.
Promising list of
By hitting him around the head with it, like killing him like that. So that's another profile point, is people are found too far from the bases of cliffs they supposedly fell from. Okay.
promising pitch.
And sometimes they're found close enough to where it's like, it seems like okay, they have injuries that make more sense. They're all over their body, right? So it does seem like that they fell from this height, but they're still really far from the base of the cliff. And so the question becomes like, well, if they did fall from up there, how did they end 50 or 70 feet away from the base of the cliff?
A bear dragged him and then didn't eat him. I mean, I'm just script derping it. You know?
Yeah.
So I'll just do my best job to script derp it.
Yeah.
Here.
Well, I mean, people have suggested that, but like what I go with on these cases is like,
People have suggested that.
well, yeah. I mean, who doesn't suggest it are the search and rescue people, because they know what.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, so my assumption going into this is that most of these people know what they're doing in terms of the mundane stuff. So like, if there was any kind of animal involved, even post-mortem, that they will, because like, that would be one explanation for why the body shows up on the trail that everybody's been using, because bears don't care that humans been walking around that trail all day, and they just walk up there with the body and leave it.
Yeah.
But no, people have said that, well, maybe it was drugged there by a predator or whatever, or a scavenger type of animal. The body was dragged there, and then all the humans start walking, and they run off,
Yeah.
But there would be evidence of the animal involvement, even
Right.
post-mortem, like even if there's not a struggle or whatever, because, there's...
Has to grab him from somewhere.
Right, has to
Usually
grab him.
Predators have claws and teeth.
That's right, and it's going to be dragging them through stuff,
Yeah.
and there will be a trail.
That's right.
So when somebody is found, 50, 70 feet away from the base of a cliff, and they do have injuries that look like they fell from that cliff, you have to ask, how did they get that far out?
Yeah.
And in one of the cases, I can't remember which one specifically, but the ranger who was basically involved with the search or whatever, he said it looked like that they were catapulted, like that something had launched them off the top of that cliff.
But still, blunt force injury to head and shoulders doesn't really seem to.
Right, but in this case, there was blunt force all over the entire body,
Yeah.
so it did look like they fell, right? But they're still too far away from the cliff.
Yeah.
So then you have to ask, like, okay, so if they did fall from up there, how did they get this far out? Well, they had to have a lot of horizontal velocity starting, which means that something launched them from the top of the cliff. You can't do it by running and jumping. It's too far.
Yeah.
So that implies something with great strength, like hurling you off the cliff, basically. Or maybe a wind gust or something. I don't know. Can a wind gust blow you, like the hurricane wind we were just looking at?
Yeah, that could do it.
That could blow you. Like,
when was the last hurricane wind in the mountains in the middle of...
like never. I don't think hurricanes get into the mountains, do they?
No.
Yeah. Or tornadoes.
Unless the mountain is just sticking out of the ocean.
Yeah. But then it's like a typhoon or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's another profile point, is that people are... It's staged to look like a falling death, but there's things that are wrong, like they're too far, or they don't have the right injuries. A lot of time, another profile point is when the coroner's report says either could not determine cause of death, or they just say exposure, which is sort of a catch-all for we don't know.
Yeah.
They were outside and they died.
They were outside.
Yeah, and they
when
died. So they died from being outside. So that's another profile point, is like, when they say exposure, because the idea of if somebody has disappeared and kind of mysteriously, especially if it's a young child, and it's kind of mysterious, like why did they disappear? And then you get an autopsy done and a coroner's report because you want to know what happened, and they're just like, they died because they were outside.
Yeah.
That kind of tells
you.
you.
As opposed to cave.
Right.
Which is they died when they were in a cave.
Right. They died from inexposure.
Enclosure.
Yeah, died from enclosure. Right, died of natural causes. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, bro. Thanks.
Yeah, so you mean like a meteor came down and hit him in the head?
That's a natural cause. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the other profile points. I know one of them is very small children. Like, anytime you're dealing with very small children, like we're talking about 1, 2, even babies, like infants up to, say, 6, that's too small to even be like, I'm going to run away because I'm a little brat, right? Like, they're too small, and they can't go that far. And they certainly aren't mountain climbers.
Yeah, they are curious, though.
Yeah.
They're curious and naive, so they will leave.
Right. But they won't go far. I mean, like, physically they cannot. Like, you know, like he does this a lot when he's doing conferences. He'll ask the parents, you know, like, you all have kids, or whoever has kids, can your kid walk like 10 miles in 12 hours?
Right.
No. Now that's I've thought before that I'm like, well, that's kind of biased because if the kid's with his parents, of course he wants to be carried. Yeah. Right? That doesn't mean that he can't walk, but he sure is going to act like it just so he can be carried, you know? So there's a bias there. It's the bias caused by the child in the presence of the parent. So the parent is not necessarily the best person to know what the limits of the kid is, because when the kid's with the parents, he wants to be carried or whatever, right? He's not, you know, so they might think that he can't walk 200 feet without wanting to be picked up. That doesn't necessarily mean that's his limits.
Right.
But physically, there are some where the body is recovered in the amount of time. So like I think I mentioned this one briefly last time, that there was one 2-year-old boy, so he's like a toddler. Okay, and like think about what that word means in terms of walking. Okay. And he disappears, and 19 hours later, so less than 24 hours later, they found him 12 miles away across, and it was 12 miles as the crow flies, not 12 miles on the ground, because you had to go up a mountain and then cross the top of the mountain and come back down the other, and go through the valley and cross a river at the bottom of the valley, and then go up the next mountainside and across the ridge on top of that one and back down that, and 12 miles away that way as the crow flies in 19 hours. It's not possible. I mean, it's not even possible for like hardcore, like bushwhacking hammerhead adults to do that, you know? It's just not. I mean, the reason the searchers were able to get out there is because they had planes and helicopters and shit. They weren't walking that far.
It's amazing that their range even went that far.
I know, that is one of the weird questions is, and he talks about this, he's like, why were they even out there? Because the search and rescue parameters are like, you have a child that young, within the first 2 days, they're not going to go. They say that even given weeks, they won't go more than 2 miles away from their original spot. They'll stay within this 2 mile area.
Maybe they know something.
Right. Somebody at that time, and this case was kind of a while back. I think it was in the 60s or something like that. But somebody at that time, they knew something to make them go that far away. Yeah. And of course, when they found him, he was dead. And he was missing most of his clothes, and he was, lacerated from head to toe, like he had been dragged through briars or something. But anyway, that's a profile point. Is very small children or people with disabilities. In other words, people who can't really get around very well on their own. Disappearing without a trace. It's just like that's just not. It shouldn't be able to happen. An old man with bad knees or a very small child that can barely walk should not be able to vanish without a trace in the deep wilderness. Yeah. And then be found miles and miles and miles and miles away.
Not eaten.
Right. Not consumed. And this next one isn't really a profile point, but there are cases that he's found where the person's recovered alive, and they either do not remember anything, or they have memories, but they're all very vague and dreamlike, and there's not enough memories to really account for how much time they were gone. Like they'll tell you a couple of things, and you're like, well, wait, you were gone for 4 days. Like, you should have a lot more to say than, on the first night I slept in a cave, and then I was given some milk, like, you're like, what? So they either don't remember anything at all, or they do remember some stuff, but it just doesn't make any sense. And then there are other ones where they don't seem to have been in an altered state or dream state or whatever of any kind, but the things that they say are just what are they talking about? So there's a case. There was a little girl who went missing in I don't remember what forest what national forest they were in, but she was gone. She was missing for 4 days total, I think. And it wasn't freezing cold in the area where she went missing, but it got down to like the 40s at night, and it was raining the whole time. Like, it started to rain. Oh, that's another profile point, is like inclement weather, just like out of nowhere, like storms will appear, and they're not storms where like everybody knows that a big snowstorm's coming in, right? Like, the person goes missing when everyone has known for the past 5 days that this enormous snowstorm is coming. It's like they go missing and then bam, the snowstorm comes out of nowhere. Or this huge rainstorm just comes out of nowhere. They're not predicted. They're sort of the anomalous ones that just appear. It isn't like these hurricanes where we've been tracking them for weeks beforehand. And when they show up, everybody knows that they're coming. It's like this storm just appears out of nowhere and just slams the place. And sometimes they'll be the biggest storm that hit the place in 100 years. And it just comes out of nowhere and drops.
The person had gone missing before the storm.
Right before, and then right when they get they start to get the search effort up that night. They just get slammed, and they have to quit.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's pretty strange. And people say, well, of course, like, you have all these missing people. Some of them are going to go missing right before sort of a surprise storm, and then that surprise storm is going to make it where you can't find them because it's going to bury their trail, or it's going to, but nevertheless, it's a profile point. Even if it's completely explainable as like, yeah, this is just the law of averages, it's still in the profile, because the fact is that so many of these ones where the storm just comes out of nowhere, they also have the thing where the dogs won't track, or they also have the thing where the person was a very young person or an old person with no ability to walk, or any of the other profile points. They were in a boulder field, or they were picking berries or whatever, like the one I talked about last time, the kid who was hunting, and he runs up to the top of the ridge, and his gun was bent. The snowstorm that came in right after that was the same kind of deal. Like, no one was expecting it, and it just came in and just bam, nailed him and dropped like multiple feet of snow over the course of one night. So it just comes out of nowhere.
But anyway, you were talking about the case with the girl.
The little girl, right? So when she's recovered, she's alive, and furthermore, she had gone missing, and she was out there for 4 days. It's raining nonstop. It gets down to 40 degrees at night. She should have been hypothermic at the very least. If you're soaking wet and it's constantly soaking you, and it's 40 degrees, that's fucking cold. It's like the worst kind. It's not quite freezing,
Yeah.
You're just constantly miserably cold. But she wasn't. She was warm. She was fed. Like the doctors were. She was dry. You know, the doctors were like, what? She does not look like somebody who's out in the elements for 4 days or whatever. So when they were asking her what happened, she basically was telling them, like, very short, you know, like, the first night I stayed in a cave and a woman gave me milk, she said. Right. And the second night, she slept on a ridge, she said. She said she slept up high on a ridge underneath a rock overhang. And that she was, and they asked her why she wasn't, you know, how come you're not covered in mud? Because, you know, she's been out in this, she should have been filthy. And she said that there was another little girl whose name was like Alicia. I can't remember her name, but she said it was like Alicia or something like that, who helped her up and down the mountain so she didn't fall, because it was raining, and so the mountainsides were slick, you know, there was slippery, and so she said this girl was helping her. This other little girl was helping her, whatever, and it's like, you know, another little girl. You know, well, one of the journalists who was kind of involved in he was writing up the story for the newspapers there, got curious, and he went looking for other business people in the park or whatever, and basically there was a girl with that name who went missing 10 years before who had never been found.
Oh my God.
Now, of course, this little girl doesn't know that, you know, so how is she just randomly pulling the name of some other little girl who obviously is still there in the park because she's never been found? It's just really strange. It's that kind of stuff that makes me think that they're in it, and the sort of the very sparse details, you know, and you're like, well, what happened to you? And they're like, well, I slept in a cave and I got milk, and then I was on a ridge. You know, that's not the story. Like, where's all the stuff that happened, really? It sounds like a dream.
Yeah.
And there are cases where people are, when they find the person and they're still alive, they're kind of walking around in a daze. But there was another case where there have been several where the kids were recovered, and they claim to have been like that there was a big dog. They'll either call it a big dog or a bear. You know, let's say the bear man or the dog man or whatever. Gave them food and kept them warm at night. You know, like
kids say that?
Yeah, kids. Like when they asked, there was one.
Are there adults that ever give stories like this?
No, adults are. As far as I know, there's no adults that have been recovered alive. If this is another thing. This is not a profile point, but you'll notice as you read it that, like, the ones who are recovered alive are either ones who cannot talk because they're mute or they're disabled somehow, you know, or maybe they have I don't know, they've got something wrong with their brains so they can't talk. Okay, or they're very, very small, very young, and so whatever they say, people are just like, oh well, they're just a kid.
Yeah.
So that there's some kind of calculation there. Like, how come no adults have ever been recovered where they're just like, they say these same weird things? They always die. Or if you can recover them, if they're like extremely autistic and they don't speak.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's that could imply that it's something that whatever's doing this knows it can let this one go without killing them. You know, if its number one priority is to keep its existence and its nature secret. Not necessarily to kill people, but it has to kill. It's taking people for some reason that it has to do it. It can't let its own secrets out, so it has to kill them, right? But then it wants the search to stop, so it puts the body in a place where it can be recovered.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is you have to consider that, once again, like, these cases were picked out of all the cases,
Right.
So, and not even all of them. You haven't seen all of them,
Right.
But so there must have been some where, like, the adult went missing, and he's looking through here. He's looking through the cases, and the adult goes missing, and the search party starts, and blah, blah, blah. And then they eventually find the guy or girl or whatever, and they get the full story from them, and it's like normal circumstances that are not,
Right. Yeah.
phenomenal, as Linus would say.
Yeah, the guy's like, oh yeah, I tripped and cracked my ankle, and
I crawled into this cave, slept in here, and then
Right. Yeah. You
so it makes enough sense to where he would not have said, "Wow, this is really strange circumstances. I'm gonna put this one in there."
Right.
So they're just, of the cases where people were found alive, didn't have any of these other profile points.
Which there are plenty of cases like that in the national parks. There are plenty of cases where people go missing, and it's because they got lost or whatever. And
that's what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, they're eventually found, and they have a normal, mundane story that doesn't have any weirdness in it.
Right. So of course those aren't picked and put in a book.
Right.
So
They're not picked because they don't match the
will.
profile. You know, like he would put something like that in there if it had other
if it
profile
had
points.
right. If it had some of this other weird stuff.
Yeah,
going
like where they went missing was the boulder field and the, you know, and the dogs couldn't
But
track
it would
him.
be required that the story that they gave would have had some impossible shit in it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could have one where the guy went missing in a boulder field and the dogs couldn't track him, but then they eventually find him somehow.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know anything weird happened, but nevertheless, why did the dogs not be? Why couldn't they track you?
But they're not.
Yeah.
Those don't exist.
Yeah.
So far as we know.
Not yeah, it hasn't found any like that. Now, but you saying some of that stuff made me remember that there are a couple of cases where these don't look like missing persons cases, though. And this is what's interesting about these. They are because the person was basically missing, but it was by the time they returned, it was too soon. Like in other words, they hadn't been gone long enough for people to really think, okay, wait, this person hasn't been back in 2 days. We need to take a break.
5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. I thought it was like, wait, stop.
Yeah. I should have used less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, 4. I've been like 4 minutes. Okay.
Sorry. I was trying to do that like all smoothly, and now I derailed us.
But so there are a couple of, I don't remember the specifics, but there was a woman who she went missing, but it wasn't really discovered that she was missing because she was only gone for like 36 hours. Okay, but it was sort of strange because I think she was in, if I'm remembering this right, now maybe not correct about this, so maybe I just won't say that. She basically, what she said when she got back was that there were people chasing her. She kept seeing people in the woods and that they were strange. And they wouldn't talk to her and she was afraid of them. Now,
And that's kind of like the guy, that football player guy who
Yeah.
people were chasing him.
right. And she said that they were, there's not a lot of details on what she said, but basically the idea you get is that she wasn't seeing like tourists in the woods and she was having some kind of psychotic break and thinking that they were crazy. She was actually seeing very strange looking people standing in the middle of the forest out on a trail, and they're like peeking out from behind trees and looking at her and shit, and she's freaking out. Like it was something very strange. She said that if she didn't keep her eyes on them, that they would disappear. That was the other thing she said. Like in other words, that they seemed to be able to blend in, and that they were difficult to see. Yeah. But she was only gone for like 36 hours, I think. The whole time she was trying to get back to the car area where they were way up on a mountain. Yeah.
But still, go camping for 36 hours with nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Damn.
But if somebody had gone camping and they're not back in 36 hours, nobody's worried.
Right.
Right. So there are a couple of cases like that, and I was going to mention last
No,
time.
I'm just saying with no equipment.
Yeah, camping with no equipment's hard.
Yeah, just go camping.
It's called
but
hunter-gathering.
don't bring your butt flapping.
Butt flapping.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, don't bring any equipment. Of course, she said she didn't sleep the whole time because these people were, her main concern.
Man, darkness coming would have been terrifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's also something strange about the canines aside from the dogs that won't track. There's something weird with dogs that are owned by the people that go missing. There's a lot of cases where the people go out with their dogs, and then 2 days later the dog comes back without the person.
Yeah, I think I remember you telling me one where, like, in some of the cases where other people were with the party.
Yeah.
Right, the person that went missing was with a party of people and they had dogs.
Yeah.
And one of them was the guy's dog
Flips out.
just runs off into the woods, right?
Yeah. And he goes off
He
chasing
runs
it.
after it.
Yep.
And then takes off his boots at some point.
He didn't have any on. Yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was
in the snow.
Well, the one I'm thinking of, because there are many cases like that, but the one I'm thinking of was in California. It was in the desert. So they were they basically had hiked they were doing this 2-day hike. It takes 48 hours to hike all the way out through this trail, right? And so they were in the middle of nowhere, quite literally. They had hiked 24 hours to the middle. Okay. So it was basically they were a day's walk away from anywhere. Okay. And they had made camp in a dry riverbed. It was like sandy dry riverbed or whatever. And he they had kicked back. They were going to drink some beers. They had got a fire going. He had taken his boots off because he'd been hiking all day. So, he had stripped down to like basically board shorts. He'd taken his shirt off too. And then night falls or whatever, and they're hanging out. And then his dog just up and bolts off into the scrub, into the desert scrubland. And he takes off after it without putting on any shoes or any shirt. And his friend never sees him again. Hears him out there running around chasing after the dog. That story always struck me as strange because I'm like, who chases the dog? You cannot run faster than that dog, especially in like thick scrublands. Like when somebody's dog runs off, you stand there and go, hey, come back here. You don't run after it. I mean, like, that just didn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean?
Did the dog come back?
The dog eventually showed up in the parking lot where the dude's truck was days later. And it was real skittish. It wouldn't get near anybody, before that it had been extremely friendly. But he was a firefighter from LA County. So
Was he ever found? Is his body ever?
Yeah, he was found too far away from the base of a cliff with blunt force trauma to his head and shoulders. Yeah. And he was only found, they were actually giving up on the search. They had been searching for him for 10 days, and they were actually giving up, and the helicopter was coming and flying people out, picking people up and flying them out. And on one of the flying out trips, they saw his body down at the base of the cliff, and it was an area that had been searched multiple times.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break, and we'll come back, and hopefully, unless one of us goes missing. I think I know what's happening. They're all getting taken by snakes.
We didn't go missing because we're back.
Ha-ha!
In the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science with half our pyramids tied behind our backs just to make it square. We hail from atop the Edwards Plateau.
That's right.
On the dusty bones of ancient creatures that are long past. Shadows of the other world. Long ago went missing, took off their shoes and died. We're talking about 411. Missing people's persons.
Yeah. So, I was listening to the...
Sam Squanch.
Sam Squanches. I was listening to the last one. I was talking about Charles McCullough, the guy who seemed to have died standing up in his pants.
Yeah.
And you said he fell into the crevasse, and I was like, that could be what happened.
Yeah.
But it still isn't quite... I mean, there are
How
some...
do you get back out of the crevasse?
Well, if there was a crevasse right there.
Yeah.
And then when the summer comes, the snow melts.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would have been decomposed enough for his pants to just like accordion straight down.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But you remember that? Did you see the story about the?
Maybe his pants fell into a crevasse.
With pieces of his foot.
Well, okay, so I'll script this. Like, he could have fallen into a crevasse, and then later, when some of the snow melted and exposed the upper half of his body, scavengers came and removed him removed what was, like, they were eating it off of him, dragging it away down to the ankle bones.
Right.
So
then you just have to answer the question: is how the fuck did he get out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can answer that.
He was carried by giant eagles.
I can script her.
That one can't be scripted without first-hand knowledge of the terrain, though. I have to take the ranger's word for it. Yeah, I have to take the ranger's word for it. Like that's the other thing is like when I'm talking to people about this and they're really script-derping it. The only way they're able to script-derp it is by not knowing the details.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty typical of
it's
script derping.
pretty standard script-derp.
That's what I'm saying. It's like it's almost pointless to get into an argument with someone who is ignorant of what you're talking about.
Right, but you don't know that they're ignorant until you're like, you hear them say that and you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you give them some details and they're like, oh, well, and you find out that they don't know.
Right.
Yeah, and that's when I was just like, read the books. Like, these people usually, like, almost every time I've had somebody argue with me about these cases or whatever, that is people who have listened to a couple of his interviews on YouTube or whatever, and now they think they have the answers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he talks about like less than 1% of the cases on those interviews.
Yeah.
The books are, you read the book and you're just like, holy shit.
Greetings.
That's the first thing that happens when you're reading through the book. And this happened to me. You start reading it, and in the book, it's just the case files. There's no speculation. It reads like police reports. You know, Paulides is not really authoring a book. He's just putting down all
He's
these
publishing the reports.
reports. Right.
your
And
own.
I mean, he does connect them all together because he's getting them from multiple sources. So he's got, you know, some of the sources are the newspaper accounts. Other ones are, he's got the corner report. He FOIA'd the park for their papers, whatever, and he puts it all together. But it's just the facts. It's just, you know, and it's all coming from the reports. He doesn't speculate about anything. He doesn't tell you. He doesn't take time to say, so what could be happening? You know, he just freaking gives you one report after another. And like, so what always happens is you read the first one and you're like, okay, maybe this happened or maybe that happened or whatever. You read the next one and you're like, okay, well that doesn't really work for this one. And then you get the next one and you're like, and you basically after a while you have nothing left. The cases are so similar in the sense that there's all these profile points that match across each other, and yet the details are different in certain ways to make it to where they eliminate the previous ideas you had, because that couldn't have
about
happened
the first
here.
case.
Right, and yet you could see they're connected because of all these profile points that match.
Yeah, that's wild.
So
You're making me want to read the book.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you. Well, you can get the
PDF.
There is no PDF. That's the problem.
Get the PDF and scripter.
Yeah, he doesn't. It's one thing that some people are upset with Paulides about is he publishes the books only in hard copy, and he doesn't put them on Amazon, right? And like from what I understand, it's because he has a team of people, and they're all getting equal proceeds from the sale of the books. Like he's the one that put them together, but he's got a relatively large team of people that have been working on this for years. Right, so when he starts to publish the books, they've got an agreement where everybody gets a percentage.
Yeah.
And Amazon is infamous for like giving authors like 0.002% of every book sale or whatever. So like they don't want to do it that way. They want to try to sell them from their website. And then like when he was first doing it, you know, he'd sell to somebody overseas and he'd ship them, and they would tell him that the books never arrived. Okay. And so he would have to deal with like trying to figure out what happened to them, and so what he does now is he just all the shipping is like the first class priority, where it's insured and everything, and if something goes wrong, it's on the shipper, not him.
Yeah.
But that costs a lot of money. So people overseas, like they're like, if I want to buy these books, they cost hundreds of dollars because of the shipping. You know, so people are pissed that he won't put them in digital format, but you know, it is what it is. They're like, he just wants to make money. I'm like, wow, it sounds like everybody else. I mean, you're mad because you don't want to spend the money that you made, right? And it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
We were talking in between the break, or at the break there, we were talking about one of the cases, which is a young boy in the Mount Shasta area who went missing, and he kind of disappears. His case was strange in the beginning because first his sister disappeared, and they all went looking, you know, they started to look for the sister, and then he disappears during the search for the sister. He's out there helping them or whatever, and he disappeared too. Eventually the girl is found, and she's like in a camp, like somewhere. She's brought back over there by people from another camp, and now they're looking for the boy. And I think he was gone for a couple of days. I don't remember exactly. It wasn't a long time. But when he came back, he was unharmed and not really. He wasn't really upset, like he had been out all night by himself or whatever. But he didn't really talk about it. And basically, the story comes from the grandmother. Okay, she's the one that eventually told the story, because she said it was a year after he was gone missing, and his parents were real. The boy's parents were like, you know, I don't know if it was her son or her daughter, but they were just real like they don't want to even talk about it. It was so traumatic for them, but they don't even want to discuss it. And they were assuming that he was traumatized, so they don't want anybody to bring it up around him either. So he was over at the grandmother's house one day, like a year later, and he just randomly mentions that he calls her Nana, the grandmother. He refers to her as Nana, and he just randomly out of nowhere, I don't like the other Nana. And she's he's like, what are the Nana? And he's like, you know, the other Nana. Like, remember the day that I was gone? And she's like, oh shit, like, because they've never talked about it. But basically, he tells her that there was another Nana that looked just like her, but it wasn't really her because it was a robot.
Oh my god.
Because like, he said that when people asked him, like, well, or when she asked, like, well, how do you know it was a robot or whatever, he said that he saw it when they were in a cave where the robot lived or whatever. 'Cause that's where it took him, he said. It was going up a ladder or something like that. It was going up to a higher level, and there was a place where sunlight was coming in from a hole in the ceiling. And when it passed through the sunlight, it sparkled and shit. And the way that she described him describing the sparkles, I kind of got more of an electricity sense, like it was you know what I mean? Like he said sparkling, but he really meant sparking. But he said that the other Nana put down a piece of sticky paper and told him to poop on it. And he told her he didn't have to go, and she got mad. And that's why he doesn't like the other Nana.
That's so weird.
And he said that the cave was
Hail.
like all around the perimeter of the cave where he said there were purses and guns and stuff, people's things, and they were all covered in dust and old.
It's treasure you're after.
Just like hundreds of these things all around the cave. Like, you know, obviously you get the idea that like they've been taking people for a long time.
Jeez.
And stashing their shit in the cave.
That'll bring a fight. Certainly.
That's freaky.
Yeah.
Fucking robots.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what to make of that story.
Inanna.
Yeah. It's
Of course her
Inanna.
name was Inanna.
Right.
Inanna.
Inanna. Yeah. I don't remember that being in the original report. Where did you get that? Okay. Yeah, there's another part where it's supposedly they told him that he was put in his mother's stomach by the robots or whatever, so he wasn't from here. I remember reading the case in one of the books, but I don't remember that part being in it. But I also remember seeing it all over the internet, and I can't remember because I remember that this was posted on ATS. This story was posted on ATS, and I remember reading it there. There was a lot of discussion about it there, and people were talking about aliens and robots and shit. But I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes where the mythology starts, because Mount Shasta is so crammed with, you know, it's surrounded by all these legends. I mean, people believe that an entire civilization lived beneath it, and they're the Lemurians, and they're like a humanoid / alien race or whatever. I'm just like, I don't know, you know.
So what's the deal with this mountain? Like, tell me more about it.
Shasta is just it's just a special place. Like when you go there, supposedly.
Where is it?
It's in California.
All right, let's go. Let's slither over there.
Yeah, so they're over there, and Mount Rainier is the same way. They're both like this. They have legends. What? Yeah, it's in Washington State. Rainier's in Washington State, and Shasta. So they're like extreme ends of the country, north and south. Like Shasta's down south, the lower end, and then Rainier is all the way up north at the upper end of the United States. But they're on the west coast, and like they both have very strange legends of there being a city or a civilization or a people that live beneath it and have been there for tens of thousands of years. That they moved down there when some giant cataclysm was coming long ago, and they've just never emerged because they like it so much.
Where did these legends come from? The Indians?
Well,
I mean, the natives. I mean,
yeah, they said they like being called American Indians.
okay, sorry.
You know, they're like everyone's a native. You're born here, you're a freaking native. So calling us Native Americans is not. So we like American Indians.
Yeah, sorry.
Which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, dude, I'm a native. I was born here.
Hell yeah.
Native American.
So yeah, where do these legends stem from?
Okay, so the American Indians do have legends of civilizations living inside of mountains. And they have.
They probably have a name for Mount Shasta that's way cooler than Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
Probably like.
And they probably don't call whatever lives in there the Lemurians either.
Devil's Tower or.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the mouth of the dark god.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as like I know that Rainier and Shasta were considered sacred places by the natives. That they are places where the veil is thin.
Oh yeah.
There was a case where this was Shasta, an old woman, like her husband had died. She was in her 60s or whatever, and she ended up on this kind of a hippie sort of like outing tour / thing that was led by by an American Indian chief. Okay, so he took people out, and they went to this beautiful valley where it was it was up high on the mountain, but it was kind of a bowl shape, and there was a lake at one end. So it's not a huge lake; it's like a pond. It was in between a lake and a pond, I guess. But they had some cabins there, and they would stay there, and they would basically try to do this. It's basically people trying to sort of do the Native American wellness stuff, like the meditation type of things they do. And he would take them there and sort of teach them how to do it. And so she was doing this because
Shaman.
her husband, basically her life partner, somebody that she had been with for her entire life, had just passed away, and she was lost spiritually. She just didn't know what to do. So she went on this retreat with this guy, hoping that he could kind of revitalize her and sort of tell her what was next. And she went missing, and it's kind of this is one of the cases where you can't really go missing from the area. It's a bowl, right? Everything's kind of down inside of this bowl, and she was an old woman who didn't get around very well. And like everybody was going to go on a hike, and she was like, well, I'm too tired to really go on a hike or whatever. But I think I'll just sit down by the lake, because they had chairs kind of set out there. She was going to sit down there and read. And they came back, she was gone, and they never found her. And she's just never been found. And she even told, let's see, there's some other details. Like there was a young boy who was also kind of like not all into hiking everywhere or whatever. And he had said that he might want to stay back too, and she invited him to come hang out with her down at the lake. So that kind of indicates to people that she wasn't suicidal. You don't invite a child as long as you're planning to kill yourself. Yeah. But he eventually decided to go on the hike. She also went to there was a cook, kind of like a camp cook or whatever. She went to him and he made her a bunch of sandwiches and everything before she went down to the lake. So it just really didn't seem like she was trying to kill herself.
Yeah.
Now people have said like, well, she got a bunch of sandwiches. Maybe she was just gonna walk off into the woods, like what? Just survive with sandwiches? Like what? What? I don't understand the point of that. Like, yeah, she got a bunch of supplies so that she could hike off into the woods. Do what?
Yeah, and someone that's attempting to go on a spirit journey or do some wellness practices. That's not suicidal tendencies.
Right. As somebody who's trying to find reasons to stay here, like that they want to get their excitement for life back. Then they may be depressed. They're not suicidal. Yeah. But the most interesting thing about that case was what the Native American said. The chief. He said this very strange thing that he thinks she went to Devil's Back Ridge or something like that. And there's no geological formation anywhere in the area that's named anything like that. Okay. But he said that he basically thought, and what it turns out is that there's this idea by the natives that there's a gate down there somewhere by that lake, like a spirit gate. Oh shit! That if everything is correct, if all the circumstances are right, that you can pass through it, and then you'll be on the ridge.
Huh.
So that was an interesting case. There are some the ones that I find the most fascinating are ones where it's like this can't happen. Like you kind of get close with the 2-year-old that goes many miles, but I guess you could still decide that like he was just like this like
keep your life
bushwhacking prodigy and
freaking hammerhead in the
hammerhead prodigy or whatever. He was just like out there hiking, But there are some cases where it's just not possible. Like there's and also a lot of the more recent cases that people are caught on CCTV. So there's cameras everywhere, and it's just like there's one case of a guy who goes into a bar. Now this as time has progressed, he's gotten more. He started out in very remote places, but now that he's got the profile built, he's been moving more into rural areas and then into like suburban, right, areas or whatever. And so, like, at this point, he's finding cases in, like, small college towns and shit like that that still match the profile, that still fit, and that are still very mysterious. And one of them, a big group of friends, they're having kind of a graduation celebration or whatever, but they're bar hopping, basically, okay? They all go into this bar, and there's multiple cameras on the entrance of the bar. There's multiple cameras on the inside of the bar. So they have all this footage they have the footage of him and all his friends. They all go in. There's footage of all of them being in there, milling around or whatever. Later, there's footage of him outside of the bar in front of the entrance with a couple of people. He's talking to him or whatever. Then they go back inside. He goes back inside. And that's it. Like, he's never come out of that bar, according to the cameras, and he's never been found. So, like, that one was weird to me because I'm just like, man, it would be weird to work there. Like, because you're like,
Sorry about that.
it's strange, right?
He's still in here.
Yeah, I mean, according to the cameras, and they watched hundreds of hours of footage, and he just doesn't ever come back out of the bar. And there's nowhere. I mean, there's a back entrance, but that one's also covered by a camera. He just doesn't exit the bar again.
There are ways. I mean, I don't know. I'm scared of it, but it's like I always do this when I go into buildings. You know, like I'm in some building. I'm always looking at like air ducts and all that weird shit.
Yeah.
There are ways, you know,
Yeah.
to get in and out of places.
With no one noticing, you like taking the air duct off, and
Maybe after they close, but I mean,
so you hid in there somewhere until they closed, and then
yeah. But what would be so the really when you get into the details of the story, that would be, you know,
Yeah.
more and more details. Like, why would he? What reasoning would he have?
Right. So that's the other thing is like if you look at his background, he was a top level student. He was about to graduate from med school. He had a fiance that was beautiful. He was like handsome and healthy and freaking. He was a track star. Just like he had everything to live for. He wasn't on any kind of medication. Had no history of depression.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's weird. There are other ones where they find CCTV footage of the person during the missing period. So like the guy has gone missing. They're looking for him, or whatever, and they find footage of him. Suddenly, he's in this parking lot in the middle of the night at this shopping area or whatever. They watch him. It's in a snowstorm, right? So they see him come up, and he kicks the window in of this building, which is why they're looking at the footage.
Yeah, there was a break-in.
Yeah, but nothing was stolen, right? And they watch him kick the window in, and he goes in, and they're assuming he's freezing because he's in short sleeves, and it's like, and he's been there at this point in the video. He's been missing for a day. He was out in a snowstorm in his short sleeves. So they think that he kicks the window in to get warm, right? He goes in the building, and he's in there for maybe an hour or so, and he comes back out, walks back off into the woods.
That's weird.
There was a case with the ones with snow are interesting because of what happens with tracks sometimes. There was a case with snowmobiles, right? So snowmobiles, yeah. And there's a bunch of friends that are snowmobiling through untracked. So this is an area where it just snowed. It's all fresh powder. They're all snowmobiling or whatever. And like when they get to the end of when they get back to their vehicles or whatever, they realize that one of them's not there. That one of the guys is just not with them. So they turn around. Maybe he crashed in the back or whatever. So they go back down the trail they were coming from, and they find his snowmobile. Like he had gone off the track. They were basically leaving a big track, right? He had gone off that track. Like he stopped following them for whatever reason. His snowmobile track goes down into this like depression area. It's not really a valley, but it was a sunken area or whatever, and it runs into a tree. It was still running when they found it. It was still on. It wasn't damaged, so he didn't run into it very hard. But he wasn't on it, and there were no tracks going away from the snowmobile.
So like he just got plucked right off the snowmobile.
Like
and the snowmobile just kept going.
That's
into
right.
the tree.
Ran into the tree.
But like that's crazy because like they're like four-wheelers.
Yeah.
You know, you let your hand off the throttle and they stop.
Right. Yeah. It didn't. I didn't go far. They went down this depression and ran into a tree, which would make sense if it was a four-wheeler.
I guess so.
And they're heavy, so it has some. But yeah, that was very strange. Like you couldn't because of the the fresh snow. You can't leave that snowmobile and not make a trail.
Right.
Like if he could have walked down the trail that he made, but there would be footprints.
He got picked up by a giant eagle.
They're gonna find one tooth at the top of a tree.
Yeah, that's right.
There was another one.
Find that tooth and be like, coroner's report, blunt force trauma to everything.
Blunt force trauma from exposure. There was another one where it was an old man.
That can happen.
What, blunt force trauma from exposure?
Yeah, that can totally happen. Hail or meteor showers.
That's right.
Meteorites.
Yep. Yep, that's totally right. You know, that reminds me, this is not Missing 411, but maybe it should be. They found there's a lake in the Himalayas.
Can't do this just yet.
I think so it's up in the Himalayas, so it's a remote area, like really remote. And it's basically a meltwater lake, okay? So during most of the time, it's frozen solid. Okay, but during a short period of summertime up in the Himalayas or whatever, it'll kind of melt into a large puddle. It's never very deep, okay, but it's pretty big. It's full of bodies. Like, it's full of corpses.
Human corpses?
Yeah.
What?
And
Skeletons?
It's so far up there that you know, like the first
They
time
don't decompose?
The first time it was reported, it was just like people were like, what, you know, and then the next time somebody reported it or whatever, it was like decades later, and they're like, yeah, there's a big puddle up there that's full of people.
Oh my god.
Anyway, they've more recently they've confirmed that it's true, and the people that are in there have been up there for hundreds of years at least. It appears that they were they were trying to cross the mountains. You know, they were maybe they were refugees or something. They were, you know, they didn't have wagons and stuff, but there was a large group of people trying to cross through the mountains, and they all died in this one spot. And all of them have blunt force trauma to the head and shoulders area. All of them.
What?
So the speculation with this is that it was like hail.
Massive hailstorm that melted into a lake.
But my problem with that is like hailstorms don't stop as soon as you die.
Oh yeah.
So you should have impacts
Yeah,
all over your body. Like
yeah.
if you fall down, it should continue to break it. You know, like it's still weird. And like,
Sherlock Holmes, bro. It's a good call. As soon as you die, the hail stops.
That's right. It's killed by hail. The hail stops as soon as you die. It's trying to kill you. Skeleton Lake. It's what? It's in India. That's close to the Himalayas, right?
Rupkund.
Rupkund.
It's Rupkund, India.
Rupkund, India. Yeah, that's a weird one.
Skeleton.
Yeah.
Skeleton Lake, Rupkund, India. They all got killed from the hail. And as soon as they died, the hail stopped.
Yeah. Right. To me, it seems like somebody killed them. But it still kind of begs the question, like, what can kill hundreds of people? All, you know, like, you would have to have an army, and there would be evidence of that, it seems. The meteors stop as soon as you die. Right. Blunt force trauma from exposure. See, it does happen. That lake is obviously alive. It's pretending to be a lake whenever we get up there. But if you go up there by yourself, it's going to hit you in the back of the head, and then you're going to fall into it and slowly decompose over like thousands of years.
I get it. I know what happened. They all died from something else. No blunt force trauma. Okay. And then the precipitation happens that forms this lake, and then their bodies begin to float. Right? And so their heads are like right on the surface of the water, and then it freezes. and so it cracks all their skulls. But the rest of their body doesn't, because it's all the flesh all around.
Yeah.
And you know your shoulders and everything are maybe not so flexible. Like
yeah, that makes sense. Like you're saying that the skulls were cracked by ice.
by the ice after they were.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that would be like, what is blunt force trauma? Like, it sounds to me like impacts from, like, so you'll have a, you know, what looks like an impact area that's broken. Not,
But I mean,
not squeezed.
Yeah, but if you were to look, let's say you discover a skeleton, and it's like pretty much fully intact, or even some of the flesh is still on it, but the skull is just like cracked all over. It's like it looks like it got crushed, but it could have been ice that crushed it.
Yeah, that's true.
But
That's assuming that well, I don't know.
The other
There
problem-
could be some flaws in that.
the other problem, well, yeah, the main one I'm thinking of right now is like corpses floating is a very short period of time. Most of the time they're on the bottom. They float during the bloating.
Right, that's what I meant. I was like, something killed them, like the snowstorm. And they all died of exposure. And then, wait, yeah. So they're frozen. Then the snow melts. Then they bloat. Snow melts for a very short period. All right, I'm scarping the shit out of this. The snow melts for a very short period. And
It
then
allows
they
the decomposition to begin. so
and then they float, and then it
freezes again. Yep. And it cracks
How about
all
that
their
for
heads
some
in the same way.
so they've like taken some of them out, and they're hundreds of years old. Like, how do
Yeah.
they know? What are they wearing? Who are they?
Nobody knows that. I mean, like they're
Is it men, women, children?
yeah.
It's all-
It's everybody. Yeah. And then women, children. It's everybody. It looks like a whole. But they don't seem to have any possessions. Now they could have been robbed, but it seems like they're up in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. It's like they were running from something. They were fleeing a war or whatever. They were
Yeah,
trying.
yeah.
They're refugees. And they just all died up there.
It's crazy.
And I mean, the initial idea was that they had been killed by somebody with
Yeah.
all the similar wounds or whatever. But that was eventually ruled out. And I can't remember why. But they were eventually able to say like, no, that no one killed them. It was something else. And so they started trying to come up with natural explanations.
What does Rupkund mean, Brett?
He gone. Oh, there he is. Yeah, but is there a translation of it or
Yeah.
something?
Well, we're getting up on the end of the
Yeah.
of the show here too. We don't know what Rupkund means, but Brett's gonna be looking for it.
Well, I think there's one missing case that strikes me the most as being like, this one can't be explained, can't be skirp derp really, which is one of the reasons why I find it the most fascinating. There's like in Europe, in the Alps and shit, there are villages that are built specifically for, they're not old, they're basically modern. They were put there in modern times. They're not an ancient village or whatever, and they're made specifically as ski resorts. It's a little, like this picturesque village at the base of the Alps, right?
Yeah.
They have no roads, no cars are there. It's just sidewalks and little buildings and shit, and coffee houses and stuff. Everything is covered with CCTV. There's cameras covering every single inch of outdoor area, so like they can see everything. The only way to get there is by helicopter or train. During the winter, helicopters don't do it because it's too dangerous because of the drafts from the mountains. So the only way in and out is by train, especially when there's a lot of snow.
Exile.
And the train runs at specific times, right?
Yeah.
So nobody can go missing by stealing the train, right? That would be noticed probably. There's a case where a family from the UK, so they're kind of a upper class family there, they would have been nobles a long time ago, but now they're just wealthy or whatever, and so that they have a son he's in his mid 20s, something like that.
Yeah.
He's good looking. He's got this beautiful fiance. He's like about to be a doctor or something, lawyer. He's about to graduate. He's kicking ass in school. He's in sports. He's just got everything to live for, and his family goes to this every Christmas or Christmas to New Year's. This is where they go, right? They go to the same place up in the Alps or whatever. So they go there, and on the first night they have there's a bunch of their other family there and friends and stuff. So they have this big party, and sometime around, I think it was either midnight or around 2:00 or whatever. It's kind of the party's dispersing. Everybody's going back to their cabins, and he offers to walk this girl home not home, but to her cabin. The CCTV cameras catch them walking, like, they get to her cabin or whatever. They stand there at the door to her cabin talking for a while. She goes in, he turns and leaves, and, like, he's walking. And so, like, you can imagine you got all these screens in front of you, and you see him, and he's, like, walking across screen, like, 6B, and then he's on, 4C, and, he's crossing as different cameras coming in and out of them. And then eventually he just doesn't come into another camera. Okay, now they're reviewing this footage because his parents woke up in the morning and he was not in his cabin, and they didn't know. They were like, "Well, where is he? Did he?" So obviously they checked with that girl first. Did he stay with her? Excuse me. But anyway, they check the footage. And he just walks. He's walking down the paths in the village, which are all covered. Like he should have, when he left the camera he was in, he should have walked into another one within a second. He doesn't. And it was 2 o'clock in the morning. It was either midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning. And the last run the train makes is like it's 10 o'clock or something like that. It doesn't run anymore, and it drops everybody off and then it leaves. It's one of those trains that can go both ways.
Yeah.
Right. So there was no way for him to leave. There was nowhere for him to go. If he would have tried to like just jump off out of the village and like run off into the woods or whatever, he would have left an enormous trail because he would have been plowing through untracked snow.
Yeah.
So it didn't appear that he left the village because they couldn't find anything like that. Well, they didn't find him for months. And when they did find him, he was over 400 miles away in another village just like that, kind of off to the side.
What? Holy shit.
So that one's just really
What was the cause of death?
exposure. There are also some newer cases he's been looking at where they find the bodies in water, but the people didn't die from drowning.
Oh yeah. I remember you telling me about those.
And sometimes they float weird. Like there are specific, like a male corpse will always float face up, or wait, face down. The female will always float face up.
Yeah.
Right during the floating period or whatever. And it's always like that. Like you could, like what happens to a dead body in water is like you can time things off of it really well because it's all very, very systematic.
Right.
But they found people floating head up, like bobbing up and down in the water like a cork. That was one of the weirdest ones. The guy is dead, and he was floating head and shoulders out of the water, like in this little pond, like a cork, like coming up.
Yeah,
and down.
yeah, yeah.
That's fucking strange.
If that water froze, his head would get crushed. Just saying.
If the water froze and it was like and trapped his arms, and then squirrels dropped nuts on his head, or one piece of hail.
What can I do for you?
Yeah, so there's more to discuss, and then we can go into like what is happening, which nobody knows.
Phew.
But that's about it for this week. I keep running out of time because I keep getting distracted.
I'm here.
No translation on Rupkund. It basically means dead guys in lake.
Yeah.
Skeleton Lake is the translation probably.
Back to work.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Right, that was, the hailstorm killing people is the most recent theory, which is the one that I was like, well, if there was a hell big enough to crack their skulls, it should have cracked other stuff too after they fell down from having their skull cracked.
Yeah, at least a couple of ribs.
Yeah. Right, not even, yeah.
I mean, unless they were wearing like big furs and stuff with their heads exposed. I don't know.
Yeah,
Still, why would your head be exposed?
yeah.
Anyway.
Or if you saw
And
you see the first guy die like that, you put stuff over your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something killed them. Someone. It wasn't an act of nature. Or it was a single lightning bolt, right? Just one lightning bolt and just
It
blew
just
all their
blew all their minds.
blew all their skulls. Yeah, just blew their minds. And they're still there. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening, and you can go to the blog and comment. Tell us we're dumb at brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com, and you can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com.
And then after you're done telling us we're dumb on the blog, then you can go to Google Play and,
Play
tell
on
us
Apple
we're awesome.
iTunes.
And tell us we're awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Tell everybody else we're awesome. You can tell us we're dumb. Tell everybody else we're badass.
That's right.
You ever
Thanks a
heard
lot, folks.
that? Yeah, you ever heard that? If you don't have anything good to say, don't fucking say it. That's what we're like on the reviews.
Yeah. Right. Only on the reviews.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything good to say, you can say it on the blog.
Let's say it on the blog. Right. Yep. Thanks to AWACS Production, Aetherium Studios, Kyle and Ty for the music, the bumper music. Thanks to Laura for the intros. Thanks to RK Enterprises and all you people out there listening. Thank you very much.
And thanks to Brett.
Thanks to
Official
Brett,
Show Observer.
our official show observer, keeping us on the straight and narrow. in terms of
First
facts.
time. First full show.
That's right.
Not even a full show. Really.
Not even a full show.
Missed the second segment.
Yeah, the segments we got stuff wrong, he wasn't here. All right. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.
Snakes! Snakes!